know it's this. It's like a perk in the talk of this shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a belly to sing on my head. Look up the better. Put on the road I just spent. I've been working $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Here we present you different world stories and adaptations. This is the 5th part of What If Saitama Enters Dragon Ball God's Arena. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The earth bucked and rocked in the fury of Frieza's spermicidal energy wave. Psychos quickly put up a psychic barrier to protect all of the spectating monsters from the black turmoil of smoke rising, engulfing the surrounding valley in a flurry of dark ash and debris. All the while, Frieza surveyed the damage from up above. The Emperor had to admit, if he had to rely solely on his physical attacks, he probably would have lost. His ability to multiply was something he had never encountered on any planet before. One could call his ability exceptional. Frieza perched down from his place high up in the sky and let out another hum or surprise. The Black Sperm army was bleeding black blood, or what remained of the army. More than half of the army had vanished off the face of the planet, and almost all of the remaining army appeared battered and broken, on the brink of death or already passed out dead on the ground. Only about 5% of the army had been able to escape the base of the explosion unscathed. "Master Orochi, shouldn't we do something?" said Psychos with a voice that almost edged on the surface of concern for her fellow associate. The Monster King shook his head. "No, he will receive no support from any one of you. This is the price he pays for electing himself to be the first to battle. Is that understood?" "Yes, King Orochi. Besides, Black Sperm hasn't displayed the full depths of his strength just yet. I must say you actually managed to impress me." Frieza casually floated back down into the crater formed from his energy attack. "If you were fighting any normal opponent, you would have easily been able to defeat them with your sheer numbers. But I am not a normal opponent." Lord Frieza nonchalantly began walking toward the remaining black sperms. "I am Lord Frieza, your ruler, your jailer, and your imminent death. Do you finally understand that?" Damn it, Black Sperm was out of options. There was absolutely no way he was going to let himself be beaten by this tiny lizard in front of the top members of the Monster Association and King Orochi himself. He didn't have a choice, he was going to have to go all out. "Let's see how you deal with this." The Black Sperm army of a few hundred separated into several thousand more sperm copies. "A kamikaze attack with 10,000 of me. This again. Must you simply go out of your way to pester me like this again?" Frieza sighed. The black sperms sprinted out in all different directions, attempting to catch Frieza off guard and confuse him with the multiple directions they were traveling at. But, quite unexpectedly, Frieza raised both of his hands up into the air. Then, a flurry of red beams came spewing out of Frieza's fingers. Frieza could easily see the copies' movements, and every death beam he fired was aimed precisely at a black sperm. The army of black sperms began dropping like flies, unable to defend themselves against Frieza's death beams. In less than a minute, all 10,000 black sperms were lying dead on the ground. Well, all but one black sperm, who was standing alone in the center of the crater. And like that, only one black sperm remains. Frieza lifted his finger toward the soul copy, the red energy growing at the tip of his finger. "Oh, I think you missed one." "What?" Black Sperm pointed behind Frieza. Frieza turned around and saw a seemingly limitless number of black sperms were merging together. "You see, Frieza, in order for the birth of one life form to be possible, countless others have to be sacrificed. Once two cells merge, they can no longer separate, and within that body, 10 trillion copies of me are struggling to remain." Did Frieza hear him correctly? 10 trillion copies. But then, tears suddenly began filling Black Sperm's eyes, greatly perplexing Frieza. Black Sperm answered the question in Frieza's mind before he even had a chance to ask. "Right now, my heart is filled with the deepest sadness. 9,999,999,999,999 of me are disappearing into nothingness." Black Sperm wiped the tears out of his eyes and forced himself to crack a smile. "On the other hand, my heart is filled with nothing but sheer ecstasy. The 10 trillion cells are merging. They're fighting each other over who gets to be the dominant sperm. For my true self makes its debut once again." The mob of black sperms began to take shape. A bright golden light burst from the new form as wind whipped around him. The bright light dimmed, and from it was a new warrior, standing tall and supremely confident. Golden Sperm is born with a blast. The combined sperm form was now around 7 feet in height. His entire body shimmered with a shiny gold glow. Unlike the smaller black sperm, golden sperm was much more muscular, with rock-hard abs and rippling muscles all over his body that made him appear more human. I see. So that little kamikaze attack was simply a distraction to allow you to form this new body. Very well then. Come at me. Golden sperm snorted. If you insist. Golden sperm flew at him at speeds much faster than as an individual black sperm. Frieza's eyes widened in surprise. Golden sperm's fist collided with the Space Emperor's face before he had time to react, sending him flying. Golden sperm then appeared behind Frieza and kicked him hard in the back, propelling him straight into the ground. Before Frieza had a chance to get back up, Golden sperm came ramming at him with his special combo attack. Golden sperm knew this was his only chance. He had caught him off guard, and he wasn't going to waste this opportunistic moment. So, using all the energy he had, Golden sperm utilized his shape-shifting powers to increase the size of his hands, and then prepared his ultimate move. Golden Hell Force Strike. From Golden sperm came a lethal volley of blows, sending Frieza even further and further into the ground. Let's see you walk away from this. This devastating attack continued on for what seemed like hours as Golden sperm poured all of his rage into this one single attack. He would make sure the Devil of Frost never walked again. But eventually, Golden sperm's lethal attacks began to slow down as his breathing became more labored. He then wiped the sweat off of his forehead once his attacks came to a complete stop. Meanwhile, the other black sperm copy watched his new duplicate with absolute amazement. Awesome. The 10 trillion merge of me appears again. I'm betting we don't even need Orochi's help. Of course we don't. You, the remaining 1 trillion of me, let me absorb you too. Huh? There's no need to combine. You already won. Combining doesn't make any sense. I didn't say combine, I said absorb. With me around, you lost your reason of existence. Besides, the 1 trillion cells could boost my power, so stop complaining and get in here. Hey asshole. Black sperm always hated this drawback. The more cells that merged, the more pompous and arrogant the merged creation became. Don't get too cocky. You might be more powerful, but we're still all in the same boat. Yes, you're both on a boat headed straight to hell. The two sperm copies looked back and gasped. Frieza had just emerged from the rubble and was dusting himself off with a blank face, as if Golden sperm's attack wasn't more than a minor spat. You gained quite a power-up with that transformation. But I have a little secret to tell you. I've only been fighting you with around 1/5 of my maximum power. I had to power up to around 60% to make sure I wouldn't get any sore muscles. More gasps. 20%. No, that can't be right, said Black Sperm, fear laced into his voice as he spoke. Oh, but it is. And Golden Sperm, now that you've so generously shown me yours, let me show you mine. Frieza yelled, turning his eyes to the ground as he did so, and a blue aura surged from Frieza's body. His entire body pulsed with energy, causing the ground to shake just as it had with Nappa. A tornado of energy swirled all around Frieza, and instead of pebbles rising from the ground, large cobbles floated several feet into the air, all around Frieza. The two sperm clones lost their footing as the small earthquakes shook them around like rag dolls. Once Frieza stopped yelling, he craned his head up from the ground and stared straight into Golden Sperm's eyes. Can you feel it? My overwhelming power. Its weight. Its girth. Golden Sperm was speechless. The way he shook the earth by simply powering up his energy. The way he walked away from his ultimate attack without a scratch on him. The tone of superiority in his voice, that maniacal grin, it rendered him immobile. Frieza's grin widened when he saw Golden Sperm's confident face waver at the sight of Frieza's true power. Wanting to waste no more time, Frieza flew toward Golden Sperm with lightning-fast speed and whipped Golden Sperm's face with his tail. Then, gathering all of the energy to his fist, Frieza craned his fist back, then hurled a strong right punch straight into Golden Sperm's stomach. The force from the blow created shockwaves that managed to create yet another large hole in the side of the already large crater behind Golden Sperm. Golden Sperm let out a painful yelp, falling to his knees as he felt his stomach being churned and pounded into golden butter. That punch felt almost 5, maybe 8 times harder than any of his previous punches. While there wasn't an actual hole in his stomach, there might as well have been, because both would have felt equally painful. Even with his enhanced power, Golden Sperm couldn't even come close to matching this phenomenal rise in power. Frieza then set his sights on the remaining Black Sperm, who was actually trembling in fear. He smiled, then flew toward the remaining Black Sperm, grabbing the antenna on top of Black Sperm's head and sending him flying and crashing to where Golden Sperm now lied in defeat. Frieza laughed at the display of pain being shown before him. I must say you fought rather admirably. Oh, Frieza pointed his finger up as an idea popped into his head. In fact, I was so impressed by your performance that I'm willing to offer you a choice. I will let all of the insolent and degrading remarks you made toward me slide if you become my underling. Vegeta, Zarbon, and the rest of the monsters exchanged looks of shock and disbelief. Golden Sperm and Black Sperm looked at each other with nervous looks, their minds trying to comprehend if Frieza was actually being serious. Your ability to duplicate into trillions of copies is remarkable. In fact, you just might be able to replace the entire Frieza force with your gargantuan numbers. Better yet, all of your copies are equal in power. 100 of my foot soldiers combined couldn't lift a finger against even one of you. Join me, and you could live like a god. This goes for the rest of you. Frieza looked up to the rest of the monsters. If you have abilities as unique as your associate right here, then I will give you this opportunity to become a full-fledged member of the Frieza force and live the life of wealthy, powerful warriors with whatever your heart desires. Or, Frieza pointed his 2 fingers straight at the foreheads of the 2 sperm copies, and 2 flashes of red light began to glow at his fingertips. You can suffer and die, as the last few seconds of your life are spent on your knees, like a little bitch. The black sperm copies dwelled on the choice given to them. It would be the ultimate humiliation to bow in complete mercy toward their opponent. But if they didn't, their deaths were basically guaranteed. There was no way that Master Orochi would give them any kind of help, and if Golden Sperm couldn't defeat Frieza, he highly doubted that any of the other dragon-level monsters could. But if he did accept Frieza's request, it would be the biggest disgrace of his life. How could they make such an impossible decision? I'm still waiting for an answer, and my patience is running thin. What is your choice? The 2 black sperm copies stood up from their kneeled positions, their heads still bowed towards the ground in shame. The 2 fighters trembled inside. What they decided at that moment would decide their fate. Betray the Monster Association and give up their free will to this lizard freak. Or honor the Monster Association and almost certainly die right then and there. What would it be? At that moment, Black Sperm's primal instinct to survive kicked in, forcing any previous thoughts of loyalty and honor out of his mind. Black Sperm knelt to the ground, bowed his head, and placed his hand over his heart. I pledge myself to you, Lord Frieza. A very wise choice, my tiny black friend. Will your shiny clone be joining you, or is he too busy contemplating about committing spermicide? Frieza let out a soft chuckle. I hope you don't mind me using the same joke twice, but I simply couldn't help myself. A sweat drop fell down Black Sperm's face. Not at all. Black Sperm turned his attention toward Golden Sperm. Dude, you can't win. Just stop being such a hothead and join the winning side. Golden Sperm peered back up to his fellow monsters and Orochi to see what was their reaction to this sudden betrayal. Master Orochi's face was still stoic and neutral, but he could tell the unmitigated fury Master Orochi was feeling just by looking at him. His hands were balled into fists, and his lips were pursed. He turned back to Frieza, whose fingertip was glowing an even brighter crimson red. Choose. Golden Sperm covered his eyes with his hands. He couldn't believe he was actually going to do this, but he trudged over to Black Sperm's side and fell to his knees. You win. You are my master now, Lord Frieza. Gasps spread like wildfire through the group of monsters, including Vegeta and Zarbon. When Frieza saw this defeated sign of surrender, the Space Emperor cackled in delight. He then began clapping, practically applauding the 2 sperm-looking monsters for their well-thought decision to bow to his rule. Bravo, you have just made the smartest decision of your lives. Would any of you up there like to join in these 2's footsteps and become fully fledged members of the Frieza force? The monsters remained silent. There was no way that any of them would be stupid enough to betray the Monster King himself. Well, apparently there was, for Homeless Emperor had slid down into the deep crevice to join Lord Frieza. Homeless Emperor knew this was what he had to do. This was what it had all been leading up to. This Devil of Frost was the only one who could defeat the only thing that stood between the restoration of Mother Earth and humanity's extinction. God himself foresaw this, and he was his most powerful disciple. It would be disgraceful not to join Lord Frieza's empire. Frieza hummed in interest. Oh, another one of you who is smart enough to realize submission will grant you a lifetime of opulence and power. I merely desire to become a part of something greater, and you are the only one who can restore the beauty of this once serene planet. Okay, well, as long as you are strong, you are more than welcome to join my grandiose empire. The monsters couldn't believe this. One by one, all of the most powerful executive members of the Monster Association were being promoted, betraying the Monster Association without batting an eye. The remaining monsters loyal to the Monster Association could only imagine how enraged Orochi was feeling. All of them slowly looked to see just how mad Orochi was feeling, and what they saw was even worse than what they thought. Orochi's stoic mask was now gone. His entire body was trembling with rage, and his eyes were now razor-sharp daggers. None of the monsters had ever seen Orochi this angry. Hell, none of them had ever seen Orochi with this much emotion, or any emotion at all. All the monsters had only one question in their minds at that moment. What was Master Orochi's going to do? Their question was answered. Orochi vanished in an instant. Frieza didn't have any time to register the titanic fist that hit him square in the chest. Frieza was blown up hundreds of feet into the air. The Monster King had had enough of this malarkey. It was time he asserted his dominance as the king of this world once and for all. And the first step to this was subject insubordination. The 3 dragon-level monsters were speechless. Master Orochi. All 3 monsters were met with a violently forceful right backhand that sent all 3 of them straight into the ground. The force of that single strike was enough to fracture their bodies beyond repair. Even Golden Sperm was not able to survive the strike. Orochi turned his attention back to Frieza, who had just managed to stop himself in midair before landing softly on the ground. You had it easy fighting Black Sperm, but I am on a completely different level than this insignificant worm. Now you will have the privilege of dying at the hands of Orochi, the Monster King himself. No tricks, no interventions, simply hand-to-hand combat. Frieza scrunched his face. He wouldn't dare show it, but Frieza actually felt that. When he saw Orochi, he immediately distinguished him as the dominant leader of the group of monsters, with his large stature and rather frightening, intimidating appearance. But now, having felt the full force of his power, it became abundantly clear to him that this Monster King was the real deal. He would have to be on guard and make sure he didn't take another one of those surprise attacks full on, or else he would be in some serious trouble. Very well, I will give you the courtesy of fighting you at the zenith of my power. A blue aura enveloped Frieza once again, and the Devil of Frost took a fighting pose. While this intense standstill was happening, Fura Ugly got up on his toes and whispered into Gaoketsu's ear, "Do you think Master Orochi will be able to beat Frieza?" Gaoketsu simply huffed. The tiny lizard might have been able to overpower Golden Sperm, but I have no doubt in my mind that Orochi will stand victorious. No being in the world can surpass him. Even with my martial arts prowess and my enhanced strength as a monster, I couldn't lift a finger to Orochi. You just watch. Frieza has no idea what he's in for. The 2 leaders were as still as stone. But then, both disappeared from the spectators' line of sight. The only visible sign that any fight was actually happening was the short and immensely powerful bursts of air pressure and wind that whipped their faces. "Amazing," said Gaoketsu. "They're moving at speeds our eyes can't keep up with. Even as dragon-level monsters, we're nothing compared to beings like these." Back in the ongoing battle, Orochi and Frieza were exchanging powerful blows. The short and powerful bursts of air pressure were actually the 2 fighters' fists colliding with each other. But what the spectators didn't know was that of the 2 of them, Frieza was the one who was taking more damage, as every punch that collided between them sent jolts of pain through his fists. Frieza then fired a barrage of death beams at Orochi, but to his annoyance, Orochi managed to deflect them all with no visible signs of pain. Orochi then leapt in front of Frieza and swiped at Frieza using his claws. Frieza let out a yelp of pain as he felt those sword-sized claws slashing through his chest. Huge claw-shaped marks then scarred the earth from the power behind Orochi's attack. Orochi then followed it up with a right knee, pummeling Frieza into the ground once more. Gaoketsu and the rest of the monsters smiled. Orochi had this fight in the bag. Frieza shook his head. He touched his wounds lightly, and winced when he felt the open flesh that had carved through his chest. The Space Emperor looked at the Monster King, who was smiling arrogantly at his opponent. Frieza's cold blood began to boil. "Why you, Lord Frieza?" Zarbon flew to his master's aid. But just before he could, a hand grasped his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. That hand belonged to Vegeta, of all people. "Let go of me, you mongrel. Don't be a fool. You know full well that thing is completely out of your league." But nothing. If Frieza can't win, then we're dead. And if Frieza does win, then we get to live. It's that simple. He'd like nothing more than to watch Frieza gasp his last breath, but he knew his friendly neighborhood monsters probably wouldn't be so keen to let him join their club. Not like he wanted to anyway. At this point, all they could do was watch. Ha ha ha. Orochi's deep and intimidating laugh only served to enrage Frieza even more. "I told you, even the mighty Devil of Frost cannot fathom my incomparable power. You see, my tiny friend, there is a simple, primordial rule that has reigned true since life first formed on this planet, and extends to every corner of the universe. Only the strong shall rule." Orochi slowly began walking to Frieza with a calm mannerism in his movements. Wealth, appearances, intelligence, street smarts, business, those are all useless, merely conveniences at best, in the face of raw, overwhelming power. A tyrant without any power of his own can rule with an iron fist. He can impose the most biased, most racist, most prejudiced rules, and have anyone who doesn't think like him imprisoned and sentenced to a lifetime of torture to keep his citizens paralyzed in fear. But one day, there will be a lone rebel, a sole person who with words alone can stir the masses to rise up, infuse them with hope, the only emotion stronger than fear, to rebel against the draconian rule that imprisons them. And that tyrant will have no way of keep his empire stable for long. For without his castle, without his armies, without his followers, he is simply a tiny, pathetically weak man, living in his own fantasy world of control and confidence, when in reality, he controls nothing. You must understand this perfectly, no. Oh, of course. How do you think I became the Emperor of the Universe? I was told that a warrior with jet black hair and the power to defeat hundreds of your foot soldiers attempted to rebel against your rule, and you destroyed him along with his entire planet. Frieza gasped. How do you know that? Only he, Zarbon, and Dodoria had been there to see that day, and only they, along with what remained of the Saiyan race, knew of the legend that could have come close to coming true, the legendary Super Saiyan. It, along with two other ancient beings his father had warned him to never cross paths with, Majin Buu and Beerus the Destroyer, were the only things that Frieza had ever feared, the only beings that could surpass him in power. No living soul could ever know of this fear, and if this monster somehow knew, that only gave him more reason to eliminate him. One of my underlings has the power of clairvoyance. She saw that moment in a vision. This caught Frieza's attention, and slightly calmed him down. If they only saw the moment, it was highly unlikely that they knew why he had really destroyed planet Vegeta. And besides, having the power of clairvoyance would be an amazing gift to wield. He thought that Dream was dead when planet Canassus and its inhabitants were killed, but apparently there was still another chance to attain this ability. That was 25 years ago. A low-class Saiyan named Bardock caught wind of my plans and attempted to silence me like the foolhardy monkey he was. So I destroyed him, along with the entire planet. I can see now why you're the emperor of this universe. It's obvious now. If you find a race who doesn't want to live under your empire, you can just destroy their planet in a fiery ball of death, which will spread fear and hopelessness throughout the universe, only adding strength to your army and reputation. And if your soldiers are even a tenth as powerful as you, which they are, then no matter how many citizens rise up, they'll all be beaten and slaughtered into submission, making them truly understand the frugality of their situation. In that sense, I envy you, and that's just one of the many reasons why I can't let you leave here alive. I am about to restore the world to how it once was, ruled by the strong and strong alone. I, and I alone, will lead this world and restore this planet to its natural order, its only order, and I can't have you in my way. Now prepare to meet your maker. Frieza once again resumed a fighting stance. Orochi had been a fool for monologuing. It had given Frieza ample time to think and plan out his next move. Frieza knew that Orochi's gigantic claws and larger body gave him an advantage over Frieza and allowed him to possess more force in his attacks. So engaging in close quarters combat was going to end badly for him. In that case, Frieza had to think of the things he had that Orochi didn't. For one, he could fly and use energy attacks that could be charged if given enough time. He thought even deeper and realized that perhaps having a larger body wasn't such a huge advantage. It made his vital organs much more vulnerable for attack. It made it much harder for him to properly target Frieza if he was constantly moving, and it decreased his speed to an extent. Frieza smiled to himself. Perhaps things could work out in his favor after all. Frieza screamed, letting his aura flicker to life. He lunged for Orochi, his claws primed for battle. Orochi sprinted to Frieza, stretching his hand back to meet Frieza's attack head-on. Die. But suddenly, Frieza jumped up into the air in a diagonal direction, then propelled himself with his energy. Orochi attempted to grab Frieza mid-air, but missed, simply grabbed the air instead. Frieza then landed a firm fight kick on Orochi's jaw. Orochi grabbed his jaw in pain, and spit a tooth out of his mouth. Is that the best you can do? Frieza scoffed. Hardly. I'm just getting started. Orochi threw his fist at Frieza. Frieza jumped up, using Orochi's fist to propel himself upward, then fired a giant red energy wave just inches away from Orochi's face, which completely engulfed Orochi's head. Luckily, the energy blast had missed the spectating monsters and made its very long journey into the depths of space. Orochi felt slightly nauseous and disoriented, feeling a dizzy spell cast over him. He hadn't been prepared for a point-blank blast like that. Frieza continued his attack, opting not to be a gentleman and wait for his opponent to recover from the blast. Frieza elbowed Orochi in the stomach, eliciting a grunt of pain from Orochi. Orochi swung his fist at Frieza with adrenaline and rage, but only succeeded in punching himself in the gut. Now, Orochi's right hand was covering his eyes from the blast, and his left hand was clutching his gut. Perfect. Now's my chance to land the finishing blow. Frieza cupped his hands together, channeling all of the energy from his body into his hands. Orochi, in pain and unable to see anything, called out for his minions. Gaoketsu, psychos, all of you, get down here at once. The monsters were a little slow to react because it took them a second to realize that Master Orochi was serious. Orochi, the most powerful monster on this planet, was actually calling out for help. Oh, yes, of course. All of the monsters leapt down to their master's side. As they were leaping down, Fura Ugly and Nyan began transforming, growing in size, their teeth and claws elongating, and their muscles pumping up as they went into their maximum state of power. You're powerful, but let's see how you handle all of us at once, shouted Gaoketsu. But it was too late for the monsters. Take cover, shouted Zarbon, for he knew what was about to come. Nova Crusher. The surge of energy was enormous. All of the monsters were caught in the blast. They were too close to dodge, too close to put up any psychic barrier for protection. All they could do was watch their lives flash before their very eyes. How close are we to the alien ship? The S-class heroes were running at a full sprint. Well, all of them except Tornado, who was flying up in the air, extremely irritated because she was forced to slow down for the rest of the Slowpoke S-class heroes. All of the heroes had been perplexed when King had asked to hitch a ride on Darkshine's back. King reasoned that it was so he would save his energy for the fight against the aliens, and the heroes didn't object once they heard his engine beating louder than ever. According to Sitch, the ship is about 30 miles north of us, replied Bang. Finally, Metalbat swung his bat at a tree, completely tearing it from its roots. Whatever this devil of frost thing is, it better be fucking worth it. I had to miss my sisters. God, will you knock it off already? Tatsumaki shouted up from the sky. You've said the same thing 47 times already. We get it. Whatever, Metalbat grunted, but his face softened when he thought of her little sister. I hope she's okay. I left her all alone. Don't worry, Metalbat. Bomb, who couldn't help but overhear Metalbat's tone of concern for his little sister, ran over to Metalbat's side to give him some comfort. He was just a child, after all. I know what it feels like to care for a younger sibling. I can't tell you how many times Everyone hit the decks, screamed Tatsumaki. Something huge is coming. At first, none of the heroes knew what the hell she was talking about. But then, the heroes heard something which sounded like an explosion, and it was getting closer and closer by the second. Oh shit. The heroes barely had enough time to dodge a huge blast of red energy that was ripping through the land like it was tossing up loose sand. The blast of red energy then exploded, sending all of the S-class heroes flying into the air. It took around a minute for all of the heroes to recuperate from the blast that could have taken their lives. Is everyone alright? Is anyone missing? Asked Bang. Bang began counting all of the heroes to see who was still with them, and thankfully, everyone had managed to avoid the blast. At least that proves this frost guy isn't a complete pushover, said Metalbat. What kind of monster could have created a blast so powerful? Said Puri-Puri Prisoner. The only way we're going to find that out is if we follow that. Sweet Mask pointed to the newly formed canyon that was spanning for miles. Then let's do this. I want to get these babies pumpin', shouted Super Alloy Darkshine. I agree. I've had enough suspense. Flashy Flash unsheathed his katana. It's time we finally know what we're really up against. Dust clouds were swirling around in the huge crater. Frieza coughed, his eyes watering as well from all the dust accumulated in the crater. Lord Frieza, are you all right? I'm fine, Zarbon. What about the midget men? Did they get caught in the crossfire? Frieza looked around and saw all three of the newly recruited Frieza Force members lying on their backs on the side of the crater in a coughing fit like Frieza. Vegeta put his hand over his eye. There was no chance in hell Vegeta could ever pose a threat to this monster. Hell, it was hard to believe anything could stand up to this abhorrent mutant, which meant he would be stuck being Frieza's plaything for the rest of his life. The thought made him want to yank out all of his hair while screaming until his lungs gave out. I probably overdid it a tad there. Let's see how our friends fared against that display of my power. Frieza cut an invisible Kai wave through the air to clear all of the dust out of the crater. Frieza's eyes slightly widened when he saw just exactly how bad the monsters were damaged. All of them were lying on the ground in what appeared to be an unconscious state. Some of the monsters had lost their limbs, their faces burned, and their bodies laying lifeless on the ground. Frieza counted at least 3 of the monsters that weren't even there. The one with no eyes and big teeth, the particularly ugly monster, the giant blob of water, and the anthropomorphic cat, meaning they must have been completely vaporized by the blast. The female Sperm and Orochi were the only ones who managed to keep all of their body parts intact. Frieza walked over to the fallen monster king with a skip in his steps. Orochi's head gradually craned itself up, nominally surprising Frieza. You put up quite a fight. I can see why you call yourself the Monster King. But in the end, you simply couldn't match my otherworldly strength. In fact, now that I mention my strength, I have something to tell you before you die. Frieza leaned down and whispered into Orochi's right ear. Once Frieza leaned back up, Orochi's entire body shook with fear, and his face whimpered in terror. That's not possible. You're telling me you weren't. Yes, you weren't fighting me with even 0.5% of my true power. I was merely testing myself to see if I could beat you at my current power, and it turns out I was right. With that in mind, I find there is no more entertainment to be found here. Frieza stretched his arm out to the Monster King. Feel free to pray to your god to save you, but spoiler alert. Frieza flexed his finger and fired his death beam, which went straight through the Monster King's skull and his entire body. I wasn't listening. Frieza wiped the sweat off of his forehead. Phew, now that that's finally over with, what say we find Dodoria and the other 2, and we resume our search for. One of the foot soldiers shouted at the top of his lungs from the ship, interrupting Frieza. Lord Frieza, the Ginyu force is about to arrive. Frieza was utterly baffled at this unexpected update. What? How come you didn't tell me sooner? The foot soldier stammered before he could find the right words that wouldn't get him killed. You were in the middle of a very important battle, so I didn't want to interrupt you and take your concentration away from the battle. Frieza stared coldly for a few seconds, but then he dismissed his anger. Fair enough. Vegeta and Zarbon heard a loud sigh of relief from the random foot soldier. Ah yes, I can see their space pods coming into view. Vegeta and Zarbon looked up, and sure enough, 5 space pods were flying in, slowing down as they got closer and closer to Frieza's ship. Zarbon and Vegeta still couldn't believe that the Ginyu Force themselves were coming to this planet. Each member possessed a unique skill set that was extremely deadly to those who ever had the terror of fighting them firsthand. The pods crashed onto the ground with tremendous force and vibrations shaking the ground around them. Within a moment's notice, all 5 fronts of the Ginyu pods sprung open. Lord Frieza, some more Earthlings have arrived. Frieza groaned. Again? Who now? Frieza floated up from the crater and laid his eyes upon around a dozen humanoid fighters, who looked at him with deadly stares and faces that said they were looking for a fight. The newcomers spoke in exact unison. So, what did we miss? The Ginyu Force levitated from the craters, each of them smiling with smiles that said they were enjoying themselves. All of the Genius then gently placed their feet in front of Frieza's ship to face Frieza and the warriors who were standing not too far away from Frieza. All of a sudden, they did something none of the S-class heroes had ever seen from any monsters before. One by one, they started taking these unusual poses, chanting their names as they did so. I am Recoome. I am Burter. The names Jace, Guldo, Captain Ginyu. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are the Ginyu Force. All 5 warriors were frozen in their signature opening poses, letting the awestruck silence sink in. That awestruck silence was broken by the sound of clapping. No, not from Frieza, but Puri-Puri Prisoner. Bravo. Finally, a group of monsters that know how to make a proper entrance. Puri-Puri Prisoner was given a hard swing in the back by Metal Bat's bat. He let out a yelp of pain, then looked at Metal Bat with a fiery face of anger. What do you do that for? Dude, you can't applaud the bad guys. And anyway, those guys look like a bunch of homos. A few chuckles were let out from the male S-class heroes, while Puri-Puri Prisoner only became more infuriated. Metal Bat continued to rant on. Besides, this whole thing looks like a scam. You're telling me we hauled our asses all the way out here to fight these scrawny chicken asses? That tiny lizard guy looks like he couldn't even scratch my bat. How dare you insult the mighty Lord Frieza? Shouted Captain Ginyu. Who exactly do you think you are? Why don't you come down here and let me tell you? Bang smacked Metal Bat hard in the back of the head. Oh, what do you do that for? Don't be a fool. You should know an opponent's power has nothing to do with their outward appearance. Metal Bat gave Bang a look that said, what the fuck are you talking about? Ooh, it kinda does. The bigger they are, the more heroes they can crush. That's how I've seen it. I'm gonna go with the Twig Master on this one. Tornado decided to chime in on their conversation. I was expecting something a lot bigger than this. Some of the other heroes nodded in agreement. Bang and Bomb shook their heads. They didn't want to cause any alarm, but that lizard guy was radiating nothing but pure evil, enough to make them both sick to their stomachs. His aura wasn't only malicious, it was powerful, like unbelievably powerful. And the 5 newcomers weren't to be scoffed at either. Not like it would mean anything to the other S-class heroes. All of them were so caught up in their own egos, their words of caution would fly over their heads. Forget about them for a moment, Ginyu, said Frieza. You had an impressive entrance there. The S-class heroes were completely forgotten by the captain. Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be by your side once again. Jinyu's smile faltered when he saw the large claw marks across Frieza's chest. My lord, your chest. Are you all right? Oh, I'm fine, Captain. I just finished a rather arduous battle, and I'm afraid I simply wasn't able to leave it unscathed. Ginyu calmed down after hearing this. Very well. Jace, if you would. Of course, Captain. Jace walked to the edge of Frieza's ship and opened a green case he had been carrying. Here you go, Lord Frieza. The new and improved scouters you wanted. Marvelous. Jace nodded and walked back to his comrades. So, Lord Frieza, is this all you needed, or is there anything else we could assist you with? Said Captain Ginyu. As a matter of fact, Frieza turned his hover chair around to face the heroes who were watching them. He then levitated downwards in his chair to be at eye level with the new group of heroes. The Ginyu force quickly flew down to join him. Feeling it was necessary, Zarbon and Vegeta traveled down as well. And just who might you be? I'm assuming you haven't all come down here too. Wait, hold up a second. Who's the handsome one there? Zarbon and Sweet Mask spoke identically, pointing at each other as they noticed one another. He's got style. Everyone stared at each other to see if this was actually happening. Zarbon, keep your thoughts to yourself, if you would. You're putting thoughts in my head. Frieza shuddered, along with everyone else. Zarbon and Sweet Mask looked at each other, then just shrugged their shoulders like they didn't know what was going on. And they didn't care. Tatsumaki was the first to break the silence. Anyway, we heard this big prophecy about a devil of frost coming to Earth, and we're here to kick your. I've found the jackpot. This is too good to be true. A new voice popped up out of nowhere, and it was coming from right behind the S-class heroes. Everyone turned around, and what they saw filled the air with gasps, especially from Bang and Bomb. For the newcomer was none other than Garou, the hero hunter himself. Garou had been searching through a city, searching for any good competition to test his abilities like always, when he saw several heroes from the Hero Association leave the building at once. At first, he couldn't tell which heroes these were, but when he managed to get in closer, Garou was able to identify Super Alloy's Darkshine, with King himself riding on his back. He didn't know for sure whether or not his eyes were deceiving him or not, but he figured he had nothing to lose. It had taken quite some effort to keep up with the heroes, and he thought he hadn't lost them, until he saw a monumentally sized canyon or rock formation that carved through the land. He went with his instincts and followed this canyon, and sure enough, it led to the S-class heroes. Garou winced in fear when he heard that voice. He searched through the horde of S-class heroes, and sure enough, the old fart was standing there alongside the rest of the heroes. He noticed another rather old man standing beside the old fart, and gasped. That was Bomb, Bang's older brother and the only one Garou knew that could best the old fart in a fight. With his whirlwind-cutting iron fist, he was truly a god in the martial arts world. What was he doing here? He wasn't a hero, so why was he mixed up with the rest of these S-class heroes? He looked up and saw another large group of warriors with identical uniforms, but each completely different in nearly all aspects of appearance. But what Garou found confounding was the one in the center. The one in the floating chair, who he presumed to be the leader, was just a tiny, scaly lizard. What's going on? If 10 of the most powerful members of the Hero Association and quite possibly this entire planet are all here in one place, this has to be quite the threat. Are you the one that's brought all these guys down here? Garou pointed his finger at Frieza, his slouched posture and snarky face signifying a condescending attitude in his behavior. The Space Emperor pinched the bridge of his nose. After those 2 consecutive fights, he was rather exhausted, both physically and mentally, and he was in no mood to deal with another one of these cocky attitudes again. Captain, when was the last time you and your team had a bracing fight? Well, to tell you the truth, it has been quite some time since we've had any decent competition. I see. I've made a decision. Captain Ginyu, your team will do battle with these newcomers while I regain my strength with some red wine and bread. Hell no. Garou walked to the edge of the crater with anger in his eyes. Exactly who the fuck are you? Super Alloy Darkshine walked up to the edge of the crater alongside Garou. This is the demon of frost that the entire Hero Association has been preparing to fight all these weeks. Garou looked up to the hero with disbelief. Are you serious? This is the god-level threat meant to destroy humanity. Yes, it's underwhelming. But don't get comfortable. When I'm done wiping the floor with him, I'm coming for you next. Garou smiled maliciously. I wouldn't have it any other way. Garou lifted his head up to Frieza. But what makes you think we're gonna just play along with these sadistic games? Shouted Garou. Frieza sighed and closed his eyes. While keeping his eyes closed, he pointed his finger up into the sky, forming a small fireball at his fingertip. It shot straight up into the sky, where it then exploded, creating a fiery inferno of flames and death which spanned for miles in all directions, and left all of the heroes speechless. And that was just me messing around. So while I go relax, you just sit and stay, and maybe, if I feel like it, I'll indulge your little fantasy of fighting me. Does that sound good to you? No objections were made, the heroes still stunned at his ridiculous power. Good. Well, have fun. And like that, the Devil of Frost was off to the sidelines, while the main event was about to begin. Super Alloy Darkshine walked back to the heroes, who were for the most part looking conflicted and confused with everything coming at them. Are we really gonna let this happen? Said Flashy Flash. Let's just humor them and do what they say for now, replied Bomb. He's not going anywhere, and we have more than enough manpower to eliminate him once we've dealt with these clowns. And as for you, Garou. Bang and Bomb walked together to face Garou, who had his arms crossed and was scowling at the two martial artists, pure hatred radiating off him as they continued to get closer to him. Are you going to behave yourself, or are we going to have to discipline you? Garou clenched his fists at Bomb's threat. I'll play along, for now, but my only condition is that I face that Frost Devil. He might be able to do his little light shows, but you both know I have my fighting abilities to back me up. Are those acceptable terms for you? The brothers looked at each other. Very well, but know that we'll be watching you. If you make even a single slip up, you're finished. Garou smirked, but of course, giving his former disciple one final stern look, he and his brother left Garou without another word. Garou could barely contain his laughter. This couldn't get any better. He wasn't quite sure exactly how these games were going to go, but he was pretty sure it was divided up into rounds, and each round was for a separate S-class hero. With each of these battles, he'd be able to observe each of these heroes' fighting styles firsthand and that of these alien freaks. He had no idea where they came from or what kind of abilities they had, but each of them had the ability to fly, so that counted as something. Only time could tell whether or not there was more to them that met the eye. The Ginyu Force spoke up. So, which one of you buggers wants to tangle with us first? Jace, I think I'd like to be the first contender in this contest of yours. Everyone turned to see Zarbon with his arms crossed, a smirk on his face, and his eyes dead set on Sweet Mask. I feel like such a handsome fighter as this needs to be handled by me alone, just to make sure there aren't any serious bruises. Is that alright with you, Captain? Ew. The captain had no response, so instead, he turned to Lord Frieza for approval. Lord Frieza, is it alright if Zarbon here gets to be the first contender? Frieza already had a platter of red wine and cheese when he heard Ginyu's question. I see it as only fitting, since Zarbon didn't get any serious action when those monsters came. Let it be so. Yes, Lord Frieza. Ginyu's turned back to Zarbon. Have at it. Thank you, Captain. Zarbon shifted to face Frieza and bowed. Thank you, Lord Frieza. Zarbon's attention was once again directed at Sweet Mask, who was looking just as pleased about this arrangement as Zarbon was. Now then, what should we do about the battle arena? Said Captain Ginyu. Tornado groaned and levitated up into the air. Fine, I'll build the stupid arena for you idiots. But once it's my turn to go, I'm not gonna hold back anything. The Ginyu Force snickered at the surprisingly rude attitude coming from this tiny girl. Oh yay, well, what's a little girl gonna? Recoome, no everyone, had their words caught in their throat when they saw a humongous chunk of rock being ripped apart from the ground a couple hundred meters away, which then slammed into the crater, covering the hole completely. Using her psychic wave attack, she flattened out the boulder, forming a completely flat and smooth surface in the process. In seconds, Tornado lifted up another nearby boulder and cut up the rock into hundreds of perfectly symmetrical squares. The squares were then cut up into fourths, where they then flew and formed a giant flat surface that shimmered with a marble white hue. Finally, for the finishing touches, up from the ground came 4 large stone pillars. Tornado quickly carved up the pillars, crafting 4 marble pillars with 4 round balls at the top. With a thrust of her hands, these pillars were slammed down into the 4 corners of the arena. And with that, I'm done. Tornado floated down to the rest of the heroes, leaving the band of space pirates in shock and awe. Captain, did she just? Yes, she did. Frieza was left in awe along with the rest of his subordinates. One thing was certain, she wasn't one to be easily trifled with. I wonder how the Ginyus will handle her. Well, are you getting on or what? Tatsumaki was addressing both Zarbon and Sweet Mask, staring at them as if what she had done had been no big deal. Sweet Mask was the first to snap himself out of his awe-stricken state and stepped onto the arena. It took Zarbon a little more time, but he too soon pushed himself onto the arena. Both fighters walked with a calm stride, as if they were simply strolling through the park on a bright and sunny day. The two handsome fighters finally came to a stop when they were just a few feet away from each other. I didn't catch your name, said Zarbon. Call me Sweet Mask, replied the A-class hero. And you're Zarbon. Did I catch that right? Perfectly. I must say, you are simply dazzling. I usually don't ask questions like these to my enemies or even talk at all, but you are a very rare exception. You obviously know how important beauty is. Sweet Mask nodded. In order to be a true hero for the people, one must be both strong and beautiful, which is why I deeply regret spilling your blood today. Sweet Mask took a fighting stance. Are you sure you won't consider joining the Hero Association? I'd personally vouch for your promotion to S-class. Zarbon shook his head. I can't do that. Could you find it in your heart to quit the life of a hero and join the Frieza force? If you're strong, Frieza will give you whatever you please, and you're looked at like a king by all of your subordinates. I couldn't possibly turn to the dark side, no matter how tempting the rewards are on the other side. Oh well, it was worth a try. Like Sweet Mask, Zarbon took a fighting pose, a hint of disappointment apparent in the two handsome fighters' eyes. Alright, here are the rules. Whoever knocks their opponent out of the ring or knocks them out in general wins. No weapons, because where's the fun in that? And that's basically it. Frieza moved his hand up to the air, then swung it down. Let the preliminary round begin. This isn't good. We're totally fucked. No human can fight that thing. In the very disastrous and war-torn S-class city, a B-class hero and C-class hero, Mohican and Pineapple, were fighting a battle they could not win. Hell, it wasn't even a battle, they were just being toyed with. They'd heard word that Naranki, a very important and high-ranking executive of the Hero Association who contributed 7% of the operation of the association, and his son were attacked by a centipede monster. Yayan, Akametachi, and Bushadrill were assigned to protect Naranki, and things were going swimmingly for them until Senior Centipede and Raffle Satan, two demon-level monsters, came out of nowhere. And then, to top it all off, the infamous Elder Centipede, a gargantuan dragon-level threat, had arrived. By the time these two lower-class heroes made it on the scene, all three of Atomic Samurai's disciples were barely standing. From what the two heroes saw, they'd managed to take out the smallest centipede and Raffle Satan, but it was simply too much for them. Within seconds of their arrival, the swordsman had passed out, barely having enough time to tell these two newcomer heroes what had just happened. So, two little humans have arrived to save these pitiful souls. How pathetic, said Senior Centipede. Let us not waste time on such lowly heroes, said Elder Centipede. I will devour them. Then we will take these two unconscious hostages to the headquarters. A painful sensation suddenly sparked up in Elder Centipede's tail. That painful sensation quickly started to shoot up through his entire body. It was as if lava was pouring down his tail and quickly flowing down the rest of his body. The centipede writhed and screamed in complete pain. He had never felt anything so torturous as what he was experiencing at that moment. The giant centipede shook himself rigorously, destroying all of the buildings around him in the process, in a desperate attempt to make the pain somehow go away, but nothing was working. Senior Centipede looked up at his superior with worry. Elder Centipede, what's going on? Something's happening to me. My insides are being torn apart. What's happening to me? Elder Centipede's sentence was cut short. Bursting from Elder Centipede's head was Saitama, the newly promoted S-class hero himself, looking frazzled and in a rush. Spinal fluid, brain matter, and blood spilled all over the heroes, the centipede, and the surrounding buildings that were already left in ruins were now soaked in these inner organs and fluids. Senior Centipede's legs were limp and motionless. It's him. It can't be. He remembered that bald head. That was the hero swindler. He was only in B class. A lot of the monsters found it fishy that he'd been moved up to S class and refused to believe in his power. How was this possible? Why you bastard. I will avenge my elder. Now prepare yourself for my ultimate. Not having the time to wait for these boring monologues, Saitama jumped down from Elder Centipede's head, spun his entire body midair, and split Senior Centipede's entire body in half. The hero burst out of the end of Senior Centipede's tail and shook himself off like a wet dog after a bath. Standing just a few feet away from Saitama, Pineapple and Mohican were struggling to come to grips with what they had just seen happen. You just took out those two centipedes like nothing. What the H is going on? The two heroes approached Saitama, their faces ghostly pale and their mouths dry as sandpaper. Thanks for saving our asses there, said Pineapple. Yay, we really owe you on. Before they had the chance to finish giving him their thanks, a gust of wind blew the two heroes away. Saitama didn't even stay to hear the thanks from them. He didn't stay to get thanks for the 40 or 50 other monsters he'd punched to Kingdom Come, and this one was no exception. The bald hero just about had it with all of the monsters he'd seen on the streets. He was going to miss the biggest fight of his life just because he was in the middle of a monster traffic jam. Oh great, and there's another one. Coming up in Saitama's view was a flying bird, a huge rhino with a wrestler gi, and this weird sludgy jellyfish, all standing right in front of Saitama's path. The rhino was the first to speak. You're not going anywhere, caped Baldy. You may have been moved up to S class, but I'm calling you out. Now, you're gonna see the culmination of all my years of training to crush all of the rhino wrestler's entire body was turned into ground meat, leaving only his legs intact. I'm not in the mood for more monologues, so Saya, shouted Saitama as he ran away from the terrified associates who just witnessed rhino wrestler's demise. Greg, Saitama combed his hands through his non-existent hair. This was taking way too long. If he didn't move this along, he wasn't going to make it on time, like always. Being late wasn't something he could afford this time. It was time for him to speed things up. Killer move, serious sprint. With the increasing sense of frustration and the excitement of a possibly worthy opponent flowing through him, he began running so fast, it looked like he was flying. Saitama attempted to do the time in his head. It had taken Saitama around 30 minutes to get from L City to S City. And that was while he was holding back and having to fight a lot of the monsters. If he kept going at his maximum speed, it would probably take him half, maybe a third of that time for him to make it back to his home in Z City. And with the newly implemented road system which all led to a city, it would be a piece of cake to find his way back to the association and find out where the big fight was at. Devil of Frost, here I come. The duel between the two handsome fighters waged on thousands of miles away, with both fighters giving it all they had. Strands of hair fluttered in the air, a few covering their faces, and others actually managing to intertwine with each other. The faces of both of the fighters was relaxed and calm, their eyes clear of any hostile emotions and filled with a relaxing sensation. Every punch, every kick, every blow they exchanged only heightened their sense of respect for one another as they got to better analyze each other's refined and beautiful movements. Bang studied this battle with increased curiosity and tumult. Bang edged closer to his older brother. Interesting. Can you see it? I can see it. Garou, who had edged closer to the heroes and was a couple feet away from the old fart, had heard him and answered his question. Bomb nodded. It's ridiculous. I can see it in their movements. Both of them are holding back, keeping any killing intent at bay. Garou frowned. It's as if this was a friendly jostle, with neither of them trying to scar or even badly damage opponents. They're fighting each other like they're actually friends. What they didn't notice was that Frieza had picked up on this behavior as well. With his wine bottle and bread and cheese platter on both of his armrests, Frieza floated his hover chair down to just a few meters above the surface of the battlefield, and just right above the Ginyu force. Zarbon, what are you doing? This question from his master caused Zarbon to forcefully push Sweet Mask away with an invisible Kai blast with both of his hands. Zarbon immediately turned to his master, straightened his back, and put his hands to his side. I'm fighting, my lord. I don't get the question. Oh, nothing. Hey Zarbon, I have a joke for you. It just popped up in my head. Stop me if you've heard it. How many gays does it take to screw in a light bulb? How does that relate to M? None, because they're too busy screwing each other. This homophobic joke elicited a few chuckles from the heroes and even some from the Ginyu force, while Puri-Puri prisoner clenched his teeth even harder than ever. So can you stop making out with your boyfriend and actually get serious? The lizard's got a point, man, shouted Metal Bat. You didn't come here to socialize. You came to kick some space pirate ass. Now get on with it. I want a crack at one of these posers. Zarbon bowed to his master. As you wish, Lord Frieza. All right. But not because you told me to. I was just warming up, so I figure that now I'm all warmed up. I figure he deserves fighting me at my fullest, replied Sweet Mask. Now then, Zarbon swerved back to his opponent and raised his hand up to him. Elegant blaster. An orange stream of energy came bursting out of Zarbon's palm, headed straight for Sweet Mask. But instead of dodging the blast, Sweet Mask stayed as still as a rock, to the confusion of his heroic acquaintances. What are you doing? Shouted Super Alloy Darkshine. Get out of there. No, an attack as glamorous as this can't be dodged. I have to face this head on. Sweet Mask bent his knees and reached his hands out for what was about to come blasting all over him. When Zarbon's elegant blaster hit Sweet Mask, a huge struggle ensued. Sweet Mask's calm composure vanished. Sparks of electricity and energy were flying from the blast, and the hero could feel the heat from the energy rising in his hands. Astonishment was racing through all of the hero's minds. More beings who can conjure up their inner energy into physical form. Amazing, said Bang to no one in particular. Is that all you've got? If this is all he can take, then it looks like they're not going to make it to second base after all, whispered Frieza to himself. Oh wait, I might have spoken too soon. The scene was now changing. Sweet Mask was gaining ground, pushing the elegant blaster wave back. His face was no longer a grimace, but rather a serious and stone-cold mask. The hero let out a vociferous shout and sent the energy wave hurtling back, straight toward Frieza. But unfortunately for Sweet Mask, such an attack wouldn't even scratch the devil. For Frieza, all it took to deflect it was a flick of his fingers, where it then lit up the sky in a fiery yellow explosion. Sorry for this, Zarbon. I really am. But the Twig Master makes a valid point. Playtime is over. It's time for me to show you that I'm not that sweet. Zarbon shrugged. Fine by me. Let's turn up the heat. Zarbon lunged for Sweet Mask, and like that, the fight resumed. Zarbon resumed the fight with a hard right uppercut, but Sweet Mask smoothly dodged it. The hero countered by sweeping Zarbon's feet, successfully knocking Zarbon off the ground. While in midair, Sweet Mask slammed his fist downward, hitting Zarbon square in the jaw. Zarbon groaned in pain, but toughed it out and fired 2 energy waves, which propelled him back and out of the reach of Sweet Mask. But it wasn't quick enough. Just as Zarbon was going to get up onto his feet, Sweet Mask charged at him at an incredible speed. Zarbon swung a hard right kick at Sweet Mask, but Sweet Mask caught it, returning Zarbon's blow with a left elbow which hit Zarbon in the stomach. He winced in agony once again. No way. You are hiding this much strength. This is the unmitigated rage I have toward all things evil. You disappoint me, Zarbon. You would have been an amazing hero, but now you are nothing more than an enemy. Now taste defeat. Sweet Mask craned his right leg back, then using all of his strength, the hero kicked Zarbon straight up into the air. Zarbon was hurtling toward the sky, astonished at the high gap between them. A rather unsavory thought flashed through Zarbon's brain. If things kept going like this, his stamina would be all but depleted. The only way he could stand victorious over Sweet Mask was if he went all out. Yes, the only way to win was to transform. Zarbon always hated transforming. The sheer ugliness of his transformation was a vulgar abomination that he wished he was never born with. And to transform himself in front of such an amazingly looking fighter as Sweet Mask was a disgrace. But he was out of options. He had already used the elegant blaster, his most powerful attack, to no avail. He had no choice. He was going to go all out. As the rate of his velocity decreased, Zarbon leveled himself while in the air until his body became upright. I have to hand it to you, Sweet Mask. You're quite the formidable foe indeed. Zarbon looked from up high at his opponent, slowly floating down to the ground as he spoke. But you have absolutely no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Since you've been so generous as to show me the full extent of your power, I find it is only fair that I demonstrate my own true power. You see, I've been hiding another side of me. Where? In the closet, said Frieza, chuckling as he did. The two combatants ignored the derogatory joke. You've been holding back your true power. Please, I've seen your fighting style. There's no way you could be concealing any more of your power. Is that so? Have you ever heard the saying beauty is skin deep? Well, right now, you're only seeing the beauty. Sweet Mask gave him a confused look. I was really hoping I wouldn't have to resort to this, especially against you of all people. But you've left me no choice. Now prepare yourself for the beast within. Zarbon extended his arms and spread his legs. The change in Zarbon's body was instantaneous. His arm and leg muscles bulged to nearly twice their original size. The smooth, light green skin was now blotched with small bumps. Sweet Mask looked upon this in horror and dreaded shock. Zarbon smiled at Sweet Mask's fear-ridden face. His once beautiful, flawless face bulged out. His nose had completely disappeared. His pearly whites were now sharp daggers that looked like teeth of a wild animal. The smooth skin became covered with these green bumps like those on his arms and legs, and fat folds of skin became apparent all around his chin. Then, as the final restraint of power was lifted, his entire body pumped up as the hidden energy flowed through his body, giving him around an extra foot of height in the process. And the bear has finally come out of hibernation. It's been many years since I've seen this bear come out into the light. Hahaha, repulsive, isn't it? I'm sorry you had to see this. Judging by the look on your face, this is even more ugly for you than it is for me. But sadly, things are about to get a whole lot uglier. You thought you were at the top. Well, it's about time I taught you where your place is, at the bottom, on your knees, begging for mercy. Zarbon sprinted towards Sweet Mask as the second round began. Zarbon started his counter-attack with a right knee to Sweet Mask's gut, thus returning the favor. Sweet Mask didn't even try to block his attacks. Zarbon smirked. It looked like he was too scared to even move a muscle. Zarbon smacked him hard across the face, sending him flying onto the ground. Zarbon sprinted to him and kicked him in the chest, propelling up a few feet in the air. While he was in the air, Zarbon grabbed him by the foot and flung his lifeless body into the stone platform. The heroes watched this beating in disgust. His power wasn't the only thing that changed, said Bang. Yes, replied Bomb. His fighting style has become much more brutish, more unrefined than before. He's tossing him around like a doll. It's as if he's become an animal, added Garou. But why isn't that sweetie fighting back? Asked Puri-Puri prisoner. He's just letting himself be pummeled. I'm not quite sure, but if I had to guess, he seems to be in some sort of petrified state of mind, said Bomb. This is the worst evil. This was the only way Sweet Mask could sum up Zarbon's transformation. His greatest weakness was that he became immobilized when faced with truly ugly opponents. His nature simply couldn't overcome it. But what made this all the more shocking for him was the fact that such a handsome fighter as this required to sacrifice his beautiful appearance in exchange for strength. He could feel the rise in power. Zarbon was now twice as strong as he was before, and he was worlds faster as well. If it were a naturally ugly fighter, it was bad, but that was the way such lowly creatures gained strength. But if such a good-looking fighter couldn't grow stronger on his own, then was Sweet Mask's destiny to be as ugly of a monster as this? Could he not live in a world where both strength and beauty could coexist? These questions were running rampant through his mind. What's wrong, Sweet Mask? Don't tell me that after all that talk, you can't muster up the courage to even stand. Get up. Attack me. Prove your worth as the graceful Sweet Mask you claim to be. Zarbon's words managed to smack some sense into him, and he took a defensive stance. Sweet Mask launched a flurry of punches at Zarbon with as much power as he could possibly muster, but Zarbon met every attack blow for blow. Zarbon's demeanor was still supremely confident. Zarbon thrust Sweet Mask back with an energy blast, causing him to yell out in pain. Using his pain to his advantage, Zarbon grabbed Sweet Mask by the head and started to smash his forehead with his own. Every headbutt drew more and more blood, and made him even more disoriented than he already was. As much fun as this is, I find that this has dragged on long enough. Now for the finishing move. Zarbon grabbed him by both of his arms, and began swinging him around at a rapid speed. After about 20 spins, Zarbon finally released him, speeding him toward the opposite side of the arena, toward the group of heroes. He raised his palm, and formed a wave of purple energy at the palm of his hand. Ultimate graceful cannon blast. The giant purple attack wave soared through the air, aimed straight for Sweet Mask. There was no time for the hero to dodge it, and no energy left to stop it. The energy wave enveloped all around Sweet Mask, creating a blinding purple light which completely blinded all of the heroes, forcing them to shield their eyes. As the bright light of the attack started to wane, Sweet Mask's form started to come into focus. He was lying on the ground, his right cheek resting against the stone tile. His clothes were covered with smudges, and his pretty face was broken and bruised almost beyond recognition. Zarbon's face was neutral. I hadn't meant to damage his pretty face with that attack, but I suppose that's the nature of the beast within. The elegant fighter walked over to his opponent with a calm and confident stride in his movements. Once they were able to distinguish that Sweet Mask was indeed passed out, the Ginyu force began to lightly applaud Zarbon, nodding at each other like confirming to each other that Zarbon had done a satisfactory job in his battle. Frieza soon joined in this light applause, even whistling to Zarbon, while Vegeta simply scowled and kept his arms crossed as one would expect from the Prince of Saiyans. Once Zarbon was standing directly over Sweet Mask's lifeless body, he picked the hero up by his back and legs in a bridal-style fashion. He looked at the rest of the heroes with contempt in his eyes, which they returned with equally hateful stares. You're all going to die. If someone as handsome as this couldn't beat me, then you don't stand a chance. The Ginyu force will tear you apart. Without warning, Zarbon's body shrunk, the muscle mass he gained quickly disappearing and his body regressing back to his regular form. Zarbon slowly dropped Sweet Mask to the ground and left the heroes with a loud scowl. Once he dropped off Sweet Mask's body to the heroes, he quickly flew to his master. Lord Frieza, did you enjoy the fight? Oh yes, you did a marvelous job. Certainly much better than Dodoria. But I have a question. Why were you making all those homosexual jokes toward me? This caught Frieza totally off guard. Did he actually had to explain it to him? The practical point of jokes was that you didn't have to explain why it's funny, so why was Zarbon trying to take the fun out of his comedy? It took him a few seconds before he could answer Zarbon's question. Ew, it's because you're into men. Zarbon's smile turned into a frown. What made you think that? Not that I have any problems with gays, but what made you think I was one? Oh come on, I've heard your Skype calls to your girlfriend named Chuck. And besides, everything about you really just screams that you swing for the other team. Chuck is just a nickname we made up because of a funny mistake that happened on our 5th anniversary dinner we had. The waiter called her Chuck by accident. Her real name is Charolette. Oh, Frieza's face reddened, becoming as ripe as a tomato. Well, ew. Frieza rubbed the back of his neck in an awkwardly nervous fashion. His mind as blank as paper. What the hell had he gotten himself into? I mean, to Frieza, Zarbon fit every single category of homosexuality, both stereotypical and non-stereotypical, and any other sane person would reach the same foregone conclusion. So how the hell had he gotten this wrong? And why did it have to be like this of all possible scenarios? He'd never been so uncomfortable in his life. Just a few feet behind him, Vegeta was about to burst like a balloon with how much laughter he was trying to contain. Even after all of the shit he'd been through, something like this only happened once in a lifetime. The look on Frieza's face was golden, and he cursed himself for not having a camera on his scouter. The words were stuck in Frieza's throat. Or rather, his brain, because his brain literally could not comprehend the word he was trying to say. No such word existed in his vocabulary. You're sorry, said Zarbon. Yes, that. I think. Frieza sighed and put his hand to his forehead. It's just that I really thought I had that pegged. Next, you're going to tell me that all of the Ginyus are straight. Oh, my lord, if I may. Ginyu and the rest of his subordinates had been listening in on this conversation between Frieza and Zarbon, and they couldn't help but hear their names being mentioned by Lord Frieza. Frieza's eyes widened as big as dinner plates, and he smacked both his hands to his forehead. No, NOOO. Wait, you thought we were all homosexual, Lord Frieza, said Burter. I have a girlfriend, and so does Jace. We go on double dates like twice per month. That's right. Jace friendly nudged Burter in his ribcage. That lady of yours is a real special bugger there, mate. Don't you forget it. Burter smiled and returned the gesture. Oh my god, I told you guys, shouted Guldo. The team looked at Guldo, wondering what the hell he was talking about. What, you don't remember? Counting this planet. This is the 27th planet with fighters that have called us queers or homos. Don't you remember I mentioned that in the spa? Oh yay, Recoome remembers that. Recoome put his palm to his forehead and stared at the ground in bewilderment. My god, is that really the impression that we give? I mean, Recoome doesn't have a problem with gays either, but Recoome just feel that if people think we're gay, we kind of lose some of our reputation as the most dangerous members of the Frieza force. Is Recoome making sense here? His teammates gave him nods of agreements. My god, how could I be the leader of this team and not realize that? It's not your fault, Captain. Don't give yourself too much credit. Guldo floated up to the captain's shoulder and laid his hand on his right shoulder pad. Besides, there's a very simple solution to this. Really, there is. Well, tell us. Don't leave us in the dark. Isn't it obvious? We need a chick on our team. That's probably why people think we're gay. Haven't you seen all those dance shows or Power Rangers shows when you were kids? They all had at least one chick on the team, sometimes two. So all we need is to add a really powerful girl to our team, and we're set. The team let out gasps and ohs of amazement at Guldo's suggestion. They just couldn't believe that Guldo, of all people, had known this all along while the rest of the Ginyus were in the dark about this. That would definitely solve your problem, said Frieza. Alright, then it's settled. Once we're finished with this planet, we're going to hold tryouts for a 6th member. Although it's going to be annoying to have to recreate our introducing fighting poses after all the time we spent perfecting it. It's fine, Captain. This just gives us the chance to make the intro poses better than ever, said Burter. Good point. Now who's the greatest captain in the universe? The teammates smiled and yelled the obvious answer as loud as they could. Ginyu rules. That's right. Captain Ginyu set his sights back on the heroes. He noted that some of them were tending or at the very least looking over their fallen comrades, while the rest were simply either staring out into the sky or straight at the scene they just caused. Now that that's out of the way, who wants to be the Cico? Hey the OUCHEBAGS. Tornado had reached the limit of her patience with these idiotic tools. She couldn't believe she'd been polite enough to let these guys have their own retarded talk about their team image. How about instead of having this self-imposed MID life crisis, you actually pay attention to the people who came here to kill you? Since I'm the one who made the arena, and am the one who had to slow down for the rest of these slowpokes. I, the Tornado of Terror, am gonna be your next opponent in your sadistic games. So what will it be? Which one of you idiots is gonna grow a pair and fight me? Oh, Captain. Guldo was the first to volunteer, desperately jumping up and down midair. Let me have a crack at her. You know I haven't had a decent bout with another Esper in ages, and I want to teach this girl who's really the boss around here. I mean, just listen to her. Tell me you don't want to rip out her throat when you hear her talk. Completely, said Frieza, which prompted the rest of his subordinates to agree. Well then it's decided. Go get her, Tiger. Woohoo. Thank you, Captain. I won't let you down. Guldo floated down to the arena, where Tornado was impatiently waiting for the short fat blob to come down and fight her. What the other heroes didn't notice was that Garou was excited to see this fight. Garou never had any experience fighting an Esper, and he had absolutely no idea what kind of methods could defeat them, the best fighting style to employ, what kind of weaknesses they had, or really anything. This would be the perfect opportunity to see exactly how the most powerful weapon of the Hero Association, the hero that made monsters shiver in terror, fought her battles. This was going to be good. Are you kidding me? You're gonna fight me? Tornado looked up to the space pirates. This is a joke, right? He's a freaking midget. Look who's talking. You look like you're 12 years old. I'm 28. Exactly. Alright, you know what? That's it. I'm gonna shove those extra eyes up your ass so the last thing you'll ever see is the huge shit you took on your life by fighting me. Frieza let out a hearty laugh. Let the second round begin. Guldo was the first one to strike. Cupping his palms together, Guldo fired a large blast of yellow spherical energy. As the distance closed in between the energy blast and Tatsumaki, the female Esper floated in the air, and when the energy blast was just feet away from her, she used her psychic energy and split the attack into two. Still not done, Tatsumaki halted the movement of the now two energy blasts, and with another swing of her hands, sent the energy blasts right back at Guldo. All four of Guldo's eyes widened, and the small alien frantically dodged his attacks with movements of a buffoon dancing on the street. Garou scoffed at his small stature and general immobility. He could tell right away with those movements that this one didn't train whatsoever to increase his strength and relied too much on his flight and energy projection. Guldo snarled. Oh, you think you're so cool with your psychic abilities, don't you? Well, guess what? You're not the only one. Oh, Guldo raised his arm, and from the ground poked up another stick-like rock. Guldo clasped his fingers together, and the tip of the rock sharpened until it was razor sharp. The green alien then chucked it with awesome speed towards Tatsumaki, but the female Esper needed only another swat of her hand to send it flying to her right, where it lodged itself into the ground. Tatsumaki laughed at this weak display of psychic powers. Congratulations, you're officially stronger than I was as a 5-year-old. Guldo snarled. Oh yay, well let's see you mock this. Guldo bent his knees down and gradually began shouting, lifting his arms as he shouted. Suddenly, the rocks that were debris from the previous battles started to shake and levitate. Then, a boulder around the size of a football field began to rise from the surrounding rubble. The boulder slowly made its way towards Guldo. Once the boulder was directly above Guldo's head, it became stationary. Let's see how long it takes for your bones to get crushed. HYAH. Thrusting his hands as hard as he could, Guldo sent the boulder catapulting to Tatsumaki. Die. But the Tornado of Terror wouldn't be subdued by such a minute display of psychokinesis. No, Guldo was a fool for thinking something like this would hurt her, especially after he saw her psychic abilities firsthand. As soon as the boulder was about to touch her head, Tatsumaki lifted her hand, leaving only inches between her forehead and the boulder. What a joke. Tatsumaki lifted her other hand. A deep rumbling could be heard not too far behind the rest of the heroes, and when they turned around, all of their eyes bulged out of their sockets. Floating in the air were 20 boulders that were nearly 2 times the size of the rock Guldo had lifted off of the ground. Oh crap baskets. Guldo screamed this unusual swear word when he saw 21 boulders being thrown at him with 10 times the speed he'd thrown his own boulder. Feeling forced in a corner, Guldo did the thing that he and he alone could do, something that not even Lord Frieza possessed in his arsenal of awesome powers. Taking in a deep breath, Guldo closed his eyes and took command of the flow of time. Time freeze. Guldo waited a second before opening his eyes. When he did, he let out a breath of relief. Everything was frozen in place. Tatsumaki had an annoyed look of boredom on her face, and the rest of the heroes behind her seemed to be somewhat shocked at this amazing display of psychokinesis by Tatsumaki. It was a good thing he'd done it in time, or else he probably would have had his bones crushed by all of the boulders piled onto him at that speed. Guldo shivered at the thought. Okay, if I take another one of those surprise attacks again, I'm gonna be ground to a pulp. so I gotta land a surprise attack of my own. Maybe if I go over here. Guldo sprinted about 100 feet to his upper right. No, a better spot would be over there. Guldo ran in a semicircle around the frozen Tatsumaki until he was standing right behind her. No, this still isn't good enough. Maybe over there is. Without warning, a tightness began to constrain his lungs. No, I can't be out of breath already. Hold it. Together. Finally unable to take the pain anymore, Guldo let out a deep exhale, causing the surrounding environment to be restored to the natural time flow. As soon as time was restored, the 21 boulders continued on their path. But instead of hitting Guldo, they merely crashed onto the ground below the arena, creating a huge dust cloud that covered the edge of the arena and the pile of rocks that now presided beside the arena. Guess it's already over, said Tatsumaki. Figures. Guess again, bitch. Huh? Before she even had the time to figure out how in the hell Guldo had gotten around her so fast, her reflexes kicked in and created a psychic barrier to defend herself from being kicked in the back with a right kick. However, she wasn't quick enough to completely build up the psychic barrier, and it was because of this that Guldo managed to scrape her shoulder blade. The wound actually managed to draw a tad bit of blood, but other than that, she was unharmed and undeterred in her desire to kill Guldo. Guldo, on the other hand, had just landed face first on the ground after Tatsumaki had managed to set up that psychic barrier and narrowly dodge his attack. Up in the sky, the Ginyu force, Frieza, Zarbon, and Vegeta could already tell that Guldo had bitten off more than he could chew with this bitch. Not only was she a more powerful Esper, but her reflexes were also nothing to be mocked. Even after Guldo had used his time freeze, she was still able to mostly avoid Guldo's attack with only minimal difficulty. Yo Guldo, what are you doing, mate? Shouted Jace. You're embarrassing us, yelled Recoome. If you get killed or lose, we'll have to consider this chick as your replacement, shouted Jace. What? Guldo gulped and turned back to his comrades, whom he could instantly tell by their faces that they were none too pleased about how this fight was going. Look at the facts. She fits your profile and even exceeds it. She has your same powers, but with added steroids, she's not fat, and she's a chick. The very same change to our team that you brought up before. Even better, she's just as short as you, so we won't have to change the entrance poses. Good point, Burter. Captain Ginyu patted him on the shoulder, causing Burter to beam in delight. The captain then turned his attention back to Guldo. Sorry Guldo, but they all make great points. If you don't win here, you're going to be replaced. Or at the very least, you'll become a backup member. GLHHH. Guldo had no idea how he was going to solve this. None of his attacks fazed her, and running with his time freeze could only do so much. And if he couldn't deal any damage, his time freeze was almost useless. He was done for. Recoome wonders how big the gap is between their powers. Let Recoome see. Recoome turned on his scouter. It quickly beeped to life, and as soon as it did, Recoome clicked the button on the side of the scouter and honed in on Tatsumaki. But when the scouter gave him its reading of Tatsumaki's power, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Huh? This doesn't make any sense. According to this scouter, the power of that little girl is 12. The Ginyus, Frieza, Zarbon, and Vegeta turned to Recoome to see his smile that obviously indicated he was pulling a prank on them. But Recoome's face showed no lies. There's no way. Reluctant to believe Recoome's tall tales, each of them turned their scouters on, and when they honed in on Tatsumaki's energy level, all of their faces became just as puzzled as Recoome's. This is ridiculous. What the hell is going on? Guys, are you serious? Shouted Guldo from the arena. Guldo turned back to Tornado, who was rubbing her shoulder blade. What's the deal with you? Guldo attempted to ponder the explanation by this unnaturally low energy level from such a powerful Esper. He began to do the reasoning in his head. Psychokinesis wasn't an added ability of internal energy, and only a few skilled beings were even capable of utilizing their energy for psychokinesis, and even then they weren't nearly as capable as naturally born Espers. Guldo knew for a fact that he was weaker in terms of fighting abilities than the rest of his teammates, but he made up for that with his time freeze and psychic abilities. Now that he thought about it, if she was as powerful in terms of physical aptitude as she was with her psychic powers, that kick that he just landed on her shouldn't have done much damage, or any damage at all for that matter. Yet he could see that Tornado had been slightly injured by it, and even now was rubbing on the wound to ease the pain. I think I get it now. Yes, I know your weakness, you dumb broad. This caused Tornado to stop her rubbing and stared at Guldo with her angry eyes. What did you say? You heard me. You're all bark and no real bite. It'll take maybe 5 minutes to take you down now that I know your Achilles heel. I don't have an Achilles, hell, you hear me. Tatsumaki raised her hands and fired a wave of psychic energy at Guldo. But before she even had the chance to blink, Guldo suddenly vanished out of sight. Over here, Tornado abruptly turned, only to see Guldo with his palms cupped together and a purple energy ball forming in his palms. He then fired the energy wave, which Tatsumaki managed to deflect straight up into the sky, with barely any time to spare. Stop moving so I can properly pulverize you. With rising anger beginning to power Tatsumaki, the female Esper launched another psychic attack at Guldo. But just as before, the attack was met with no target. Tornado's eyebrows furrowed, and on the sidelines, the S-class heroes were giving each other puzzled looks because, like Tornado, none of them had seen Guldo move at all. What's the matter, Tornado of Terror? You were talking all that good shit a second ago. Ramming up from behind Tornado, Guldo launched a volley of jab punches. Tornado attempted to turn around so she could give a proper counter-attack, but by the time she did, Guldo had already launched himself out of her range. You know, when I first saw you, my first thought and definite conclusion was that you're a boner killer. Her teeth became jagged, and her pupils disappeared in an anime-like fashion. I mean, look at you. The only thing you have going for you in bed is that you don't have to get on your knees. Tatsumaki screamed, and fired a consecutive stream of psychic attacks at Guldo with pure anger fueling her. The force from the attacks caused the tiles in the arena to crack, creating more dust clouds. Despite her inability to see what was in the dust cloud, Tornado continued her assault. After about 20 seconds of this ferocious outburst, Tornado's attacks started to slow down, until her arms were down at her sides. The entire crowd of spectators were watching the dust cloud, waiting to see what had happened to the green alien. But as the dust cleared, it revealed nothing. Tornado, refusing to believe her attack didn't work, started to look around to see where Guldo had gone. Tornado, above you, shouted King. Tornado craned her head up, and sure enough, Guldo was floating about 20 feet in the air, giggling in delight. For some reason, instead of preparing another energy attack, a purple aura had enveloped Guldo's right fist. With a confident shout, Guldo descended to the ground, his fist burning brighter as he got closer to Tornado. Tornado, something isn't right about that. You should dodge instead of facing it head-on like Sweet Mask should have done, shouted Bomb. Don't tell me what to do. Tornado grunted, and a light green aura shimmered all over her body. Haven't you learned, moron? My psychic barrier can take any attack you dish out at me. Well then, let's see if I can penetrate your protection with my fist and blow my load all over your insides. Guldo swung his fist straight into Tatsumaki's chest. As soon as these two incredible energies clashed, lightning began sparking all around the two Espers. The point of resistance was now a bright light, too bright to be looked at directly unless the onlookers wanted to temporarily blind it. But the three martial artists soon began to notice a shift in the tide of this clash. One by one, the rest of the heroes and space pirates saw this as well. The purple light from Guldo's energized fist was starting to outshine the glow of Tatsumaki's green psychic barrier. Tornado couldn't believe this. There's no way you could have channeled this much power. How did you manage to gather up so much energy in such a short amount of time? A true magician never reveals his secrets, and your act is getting stale. So how about I close the curtains on your magic show to save you the humiliation? Guldo then suddenly withdrew his fist from the clash, confusing Tornado. Knowing she would be distracted, Guldo kneed her hard in the stomach, using some of the leftover energy he gathered together to add a little more juice to his attack. Tatsumaki didn't even have the time to put up another barrier from the emotional anger and confusion churning in her brain. The breath was knocked straight out of her. Barely being able to stay on her 2 feet, Tornado wobbled on the stone tiles. Guldo let out a malicious laugh. Is it over already? His question was answered. Tornado raised both her hands and fired a huge light green wave of psychic energy. You think I'm done yet? I'm going to deal all the damage you gave to me and multiply it by 1,000. But as before, Guldo vanished out of her line of sight, reappearing to her left and landing a hard left kick to her face. Guldo grinned. He could feel her psychic barrier getting weaker. If she kept on focusing her energy on her attacks and not her psychic barriers, he'd finish her in 1 minute. 2 minutes if he was sloppy. Bang, bomb, and Garou could see how easily Tornado was playing into her opponent's hands. She was letting anger and pride cloud her judgment, and if she didn't snap out of it, she stood no chance of winning. Bang was the first of the three to speak what was on all of their minds. Tornado, you need to calm down. Whatever trick he has, he's somehow able to avoid all of your attacks. You should go on the defensive and try to come up with a plan instead of blatantly and mindlessly launching psychic blasts at him. Just stop being such a melodramatic little girl and try thinking of a strategy for once. Bang was thrust back a few hundred feet, until he was lodged into one of the boulders that were all around the valley. Everyone gasped when they realized that Tornado was the one who sent him flying with her psychic blast. Bang! Bomb sprinted to his brother's aid, while Garou smirked at his former master's lifeless form. Shut up. Just shut up, old man. I don't need you to tell me how to fight my battles. Next to Blast, I'm the strongest hero in the association. And for the rest of you chumps, Tatsumaki stared angrily at the rest of the spectating heroes. You think you're hot shit. Without me, you'd all already be buried under a pile of alien bullets, or be crushed under the weight of a giant freaking Godzilla monster. I quote, am popular, I'm talented, everybody loves me, and I am the hero association. Nobody else. Hey Tornado. What? You forgot something. Guldo couldn't believe how easily she'd ignored him. He didn't even have to use his time freeze to gather the energy needed to send this bitch out of the arena. You think you're a tornado? Well then, here comes the hurricane. Guldo jumped and kicked Tornado as hard as he possibly could with a right side kick, and coupled with the energy he had been channeling into his leg, made it something that Tatsumaki's barriers could no hold back with all of the damage she sustained. Tatsumaki was sent flying out of the arena with the momentum from Guldo's kick still keeping his foot firmly locked onto Tatsumaki's back. Their mid-air flight was finally stopped when they reached the boulder that Bang had just been slammed into moments ago. Tornado was sent face first into the boulder, creating a mini crater in the process. Bang and Bomb looked at this in horror just a few feet below. The savage beatdown was gruesome indeed. It's over. I won. Guldo released his foot from Tornado's back, causing her to fall to the ground like a stone. Bomb quickly caught Tornado before she hit the ground. He grimaced at her unconscious and severely beaten state. Her wounds run deep. Bomb turned his attention back to his younger brother. Are you all right, brother? I'm fine. That was nothing, really. In fact, it knocked a kink loose in my shoulder. This joke actually managed to get a laugh out of Bomb. But that laugh soon faded when he heard more laughter from the enemy side. Both Bang and Bomb sneered at the jovial attitude of these disgraceful space pirates. Only monsters like them could celebrate the torture and humiliating defeat of their opponents like this. On the other side, the Ginyus had all put Guldo on their shoulders, chanting his name with pride, all 5 of them smiling in sheer ecstasy. Guldo, 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 Guldo. After about a minute of this chanting, they finally took him off of their shoulders and gathered around Guldo, patting him on the shoulder, laughing in delight and some disbelief as well. Fucking crikey. Guldo, mate, how do you do that? It was so easy. Once you told me her power level was 12, I started thinking to myself, and I realized she must only use her psychic abilities, and without them, she was 100 times weaker than just one of our foot soldiers. And she couldn't have made it easier. All I had to do was get her riled up with insults and make sure she stayed on the offensive so she wouldn't keep her psychic barriers up. And even better, she stayed in one place, so I didn't have to worry about her being faster than me or wasting time tracking her movements. But how did you gather so much energy to break through her defenses? Questioned Burter. I just used the excess time I had during the time freeze to gather up as much energy as I possibly could. Then, once I felt I had enough energy or I ran out of breath, I'd move to another spot and boom. Laughter poured out from the Ginyus once more. I must say, Guldo, you did outstanding, simply outstanding. Frieza had floated down to be at eye level with the rest of the Ginyus. I honestly thought you were done for, but you managed to outmatch a stronger opponent with tactics and trickery, all the while making witty insults. It was almost like looking in a mirror. Guldo smiled even wider, and graciously bowed to Lord Frieza. Such praise from you is the highest praise I can think of. I'm honored to know that you thought so highly of my battle, and I thank you for your kind words. Frieza gave Guldo a wink, and levitated his chair back to the higher ground beside Zarbon and Vegeta. It was the captain who spoke next. Guldo, I have to say, I didn't know you were capable of coming up with such clever plans like that. Guldo blushed. I owe you an apology. You proved today that you're a pivotal member to this team, and you could never be replaced. This was met with nods of agreement by the rest of the team. All, Captain, in your honor, I declare that on our next vacation, you will be the chief advisor for all of our activities. What? Did Guldo hear him right? Being the chief advisor for their activities was a very special privilege for Captain Ginyu, and he always took pride in being the leader on their vacations. Are you being serious, Captain? Completely, you've earned it. All in favor of Guldo being the leader for our next vacation. Aye, then the motion is passed. Guldo let out a chuckle in disbelief. I think this is the greatest day of my life. Laughter rang out yet again. So right now, we're 2 for 2. Anybody in the mood to go next? Each of the Ginyus were trying to figure out how they would settle this debacle, but before a tiebreaker could even be decided, Recoome instantaneously flew down to the center of the arena. Once Burter and Jace realized this, they both started yelling insults at Recoome. Mate, that's not how we're doing this. Get your arse back up here. You're not playing fair. Oh, stop your bickering. Frieza's voice silenced any more insults that the two Ginyus had to say. Life isn't fair. You two were distracted, and he took the moment. So he's the next fighter. No buts. The two grumbled, crossing their arms like children being scolded by their parents. Recoome snickered to himself as he watched them get scolded, with Guldo following suit. Go get him, Recoome, shouted Guldo, who was still glowing from his victory. Recoome will beat these chumps just for you, Guldo. Then, he raised his hands to the sky, motioning for the next contestant to step forth. Recoome is ready to enter the third round. Now which one of you sissy pants has the guts, the moxie, and the passion to stand up here and go toe-to-toe with Recoome, the bringer of doom? Half of the heroes were checking the wounds of Tatsumaki and double-checking Sweet Mask's injuries, and the other half was still standing cross-armed and silent. But once Recoome came down to the arena, all of the heroes gave him their attention. All of the heroes were staring at each other, seeing if anyone was jumping in their place in excitement for this next opponent, but nobody seemed to be interested. Or at least, that's what it seemed. For it was the lowest S-class hero yet perhaps the most humble of them all, Puri-Puri Prisoner, who volunteered himself to be the next runner-up in this competition. Yo Puri, you sure you don't want me to be the next fighter? Said Super Alloy Darkshine. Don't you have faith in me, Darky? Replied Puri-Puri Prisoner. Ooh, he shifted in slight discomfort, yet Super Alloy still couldn't help but crack a smile. My bad, you've totally got this. Now go show that punk the power of us muscle men. Oh, I will. This is going to be a battle of the angels. Puri-Puri Prisoner jumped up from the ground onto the platform, causing slight vibrations in the stone tiles. So, someone who dares challenge the awesome power of Recoome. I applaud your courage, good sir. Well, when I see a handsome fighter, I simply can't help myself. And you seem to be a cut above the rest in terms of showmanship. Zarbon took detailed observations of this newcomer in his head, and he believed he came up with an answer for all of his odd mannerisms. Oh, my lord, I am rather sure that fighter is homosexual, whispered Zarbon into Lord Frieza's ear. Frieza instantly closed his eyes and shook his head in disagreement. Nope, no way. Zarbon gave his master a questionable look. I really think he is. His mannerisms, his voice, and I saw he was angry whenever you or the other Earthling made one of those sexual jokes. I am quite sure he is homosexual. Yea, that's what I thought about you and the Ginyus, and look how that turned out, replied Frieza with an annoyed tone of voice. But, my lord, alright, you know what? I can't deal with this anymore. It's like a literal mind fuck. Lord Frieza stood up in his chair and screamed at the top of his lungs, okay, stop. This sudden yell brought the two fighters' attention away from each other and onto Frieza. I want to clear this up right now. Whoever is homosexual, please raise your hand. Don't be shy, just get out of the closet and fess up. Puri-Puri Prisoner's hand rose up, while everyone else was looking out into the sky, clearly uncomfortable with the question that was asked. But then, Frieza noticed a hand perching up from just above the edge of the arena. Who is that? I can't see your face. Show yourself. His head was pulled up and revealed Sweet Mask, with Metal Bat holding his hand up and snickering like the immature teenager he was. Metal Bat. Bang swatted Bad's hand away from Sweet Mask's unconscious body. This is serious. Enough with your shenanigans and derogatory jokes. Alright. I was just having some fun. It's been so boring. Metal Bat grumbled to himself and stuffed his hand inside his pocket. Lord Frieza huffed. Alright, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't balling it again. Perfectly understandable, my lord. Okay then, said Puri-Puri Prisoner. Shall we continue? Of course. But before we begin, what is your name? Puri-Puri Prisoner. I see. Very exotic. Now, let Recoome ask, exactly why did you choose to fight Recoome? Why, you ask? It's like I said before, you, alongside the other one that defeated Sweet Mask, were the only ones that caught my eye. Whenever I see a handsome man, I just can't help myself. It's actually how I ended up in jail. A gay hero in jail. You must have had prisoners lining up by cell number for their daily hole inspections, if you know what I mean. Very funny, and while I did manage to get to peek through a hole or two, everything was consensual. Recoome sees. Well then, enough chit-chat. Recoome flexed his muscles, bent his knees, and tightened his biceps while keeping his arms up in the air. Now, before we begin our match, I'm obligated to inform you that you're dealing with the 5-time champion. Puri-Puri prisoner shot Recoome a confused look. Champion of what? WrestleMania. Recoome pointed at his opponent and began shouting, Puri-Puri prisoner. You talk about your life as a prison rapist and how your sexual encounters were consensual. But whether or not that's true, that doesn't mean a goddamn thing to this man. Because the name's Recoome. It rhymes with doom. And your holes are gonna be hurting. Oh, too. SOON. Puri-Puri prisoner stood silent, yet his face was relaxed and one could tell the S-class hero was quite amused by the loud and game show host attitude he displayed in his presentation. Very well then, Recoome. I like your flamboyant attitude, so I'll play along with whatever little wrestling persona you've developed for yourself. Puri-Puri prisoner began flexing his muscles similar to Recoome, and started doing poses in the process. I, Puri-Puri prisoner, have had many unsavory moments of defeat at the hands of monsters more powerful than I might be at the lowest level of S-class, and I may have had my moments of weakness that got me sent to a warm bunk and 3 meals a day. But that matters not at this moment. Today, I will prove my worth as an S-class hero. Puri-Puri prisoner pointed at Recoome and scrunched his eyebrows. So I, Puri-Puri prisoner, the angel of the depths, will send you to your doom. Oh, too soon. Recoome gave Puri-Puri prisoner a teeth-filled smile. Finally, someone who gets it. That's what Recoome likes to hear. This will truly be the pinnacle match of the Frieza mania. Enough talk, shouted Lord Frieza. Let the third round commence. Alright, Recoome will start the round with a Recoome elbow. Recoome sprinted up to Puri-Puri prisoner and elbowed the S-class hero in the face. Puri-Puri prisoner staggered back, clutching his face in pain. Come on, don't tell me after all that monologuing. Puri-Puri prisoner can't even stand up to a Recoome elbow. Not even close. Puri-Puri prisoner quickly sprinted up to Recoome and punched him hard in the face. Angel punch. Refusing to let him recover, he came up to Recoome and launched a powerful right jab. The force of the blow sent Recoome staggering back a few feet, with his head facing the ground. Puri-Puri prisoner smiled to himself. Good, at least I was able to deal some damage to him. But his smile faltered when he saw Recoome with a smile of his own. Nice attempt, but Recoome's not gonna go down with attacks as weak as that. This isn't good. Puri-Puri prisoner touched the tip of his nose and grimaced at what he saw. Blood was streaming down his nostril. This was a mirror reflection of his battle with the Deep Sea King. No, Recoome was even stronger than the Deep Sea King. And if what he saw in this mirror wasn't a facade, then Puri-Puri prisoner wasn't going to last much longer. So in order to stay on top in this fight, he was going to have to come up with a very good strategy to play on Recoome's weakness. But he couldn't even land a proper blow in this form, so there was his only choice. Angel style, here he came. Did Recoome knock a circuit loose in you already? Why are you staring out into the stars like that? Puri-Puri prisoner turned back to Recoome, his face still confident and determined. Recoome, you're about to see stars illuminating the battlefield. Ready, transform. Puri-Puri prisoner's body began to illuminate with a light purple hue. His skin went from a pale white color to a rainbow symposium of colors. But as quickly as this colorful light came, it vanished. What came next was all of Puri-Puri prisoner's clothing ripped off of his body, the sheer size increase of the S-class hero's muscles too big for them to handle. Puri-Puri prisoner angel style. Puri-Puri prisoner began posing, stretching his body parts and flexing his arm muscles in the process. My angel style enhances my fighting strength to amazing heights. And I've learned a few lessons in these past few weeks, and not only that, but I've done some seriously intense training in preparation for the arrival of your boss, so beating me won't be as easy as you might think. Interesting. This will certainly bring Recoome some more entertainment. And Recoome has to say, nice. Puri-Puri prisoner took a second to realize what he meant, and when he did, he let out a sly smirk. Thank you, not that I swing for the other side, but yours is too big to go uncomplimented. Now then, let us resume our battle. Puri-Puri prisoner launched himself at Recoome and jabbed him in the gut. Recoome, however, managed to block Puri-Puri prisoner's attack and threw a right hook to the S-class hero's head. But before Recoome's fist could make it, Puri-Puri prisoner kicked him hard in the stomach and hit him again with a powerful left side kick. Puri-Puri prisoner followed up with his left kick and struck with his signature attack. Dark Angel Flash. Black wings appeared behind Puri-Puri prisoner, and the S-class hero bombed Recoome with a barrage of punches with intent to kill. Recoome's feet were hammered into the ground, and as he was propelled back, the tiles on the ground began to rupture and crack. Recoome licked the edge of his mouth and became infuriated with what he tasted, his own blood. Recoome's blood is starting to boil. You asked for this. Recoome flew toward the S-class hero and attacked with a stream of kicks. Puri-Puri prisoner was able to match each of his attacks, albeit some nominal pain with every attack. Recoome briefly stopped his punches, then twirled himself around. Puri-Puri prisoner realized what he was trying to do. He was trying to gain momentum through his spinning like a dancer, or even a ballerina. Once Recoome finished spinning around multiple times, he swung his leg to where Puri-Puri prisoner was standing. But Recoome quickly realized that Puri-Puri prisoner had disappeared from his line of sight. The S-class hero reappeared in his line of sight and kicked him in his jaw. Angel kick. Recoome let out a groan. But sadly, Puri-Puri prisoner's kick wasn't strong enough to phase Recoome completely, and he retaliated with a strong uppercut into Puri-Puri prisoner's stomach. The force from both fighters' attacks created small shockwaves that managed to ruffle up the hair of the heroes who were spectating. Both fighters were pushed back a few feet. The air of hostility only heightened through these blows. Garou could tell the intensity at which Puri-Puri prisoner was fighting at. Recoome was certainly a better fighter than the short one, and he could see his movements were faster than the first contestant. Right now, Puri-Puri prisoner looked like he was at a severe disadvantage, and unless he was able to expose Recoome's weakness, Puri-Puri prisoner's hole was already dug. Nappa's focus was split between trying to track the insane power that was sprinting further away from him, who he assumed was Saitama's energy, and the big collection of energy levels that were all gathered around Frieza and his cohorts. When he felt 5 power levels coming up from space, it didn't take a genius for him to put 2 and 2 together. But he'd never expected Frieza and the genius to arrive here all at once. Looks like Frieza was pulling out all the stops for this jam in his empire. He'd felt some power levels spike, then suddenly crash in less than a minute, so he guessed there were some sort of 1v1 duels or matches going on, and whoever lost would end up paying the ultimate price, their pride. Nappa had to find out what was really going on. First, he'd strangle Vegeta to death. Then, he'd explain the situation on why he did that to Frieza, and assuming Frieza was the cold, calculating, egotistical reptile who only viewed his soldiers as commodities, he'd take Nappa back with open arms. He hoped. Hey Nappa. Sonic broke through Nappa's train of thought. I gotta ask you something. Okay, what? How are you able to use all of those supernatural abilities? Like flying, being able to create an aura around your body that shook the ground around me, and create those energy blasts. Okay, 2 things. Nappa swung his body around to face Sonic. 1. Why in the hell would I tell you how to do that? And 2. Why in the hell do you want to know? You don't understand. Sonic ran his hands through his hair and turned his back to Nappa. What had gotten into him? Ever since Nappa had given him that courtesy of respect, Sonic began tossing and turning in his bed with a new feeling that he couldn't quite describe. His defeat by Saitama's hands had made him feel inferior in every possible way, and right now, the only who could comprehend what he was going through was the very guy who defeated him. You understand what I'm feeling after being defeated by Saitama, and you understand that I am sacrificing a part of my pride by asking you to teach me what you know about your superpowers. I wouldn't be asking you such a thing if I knew any other way, but I don't have any other way. All the training I've done, every time I am defeated and start a new regiment, I feel the growth in strength is less and less. It's as if I've reached the limit of my strength and the knowledge on how to get any stronger, and at my current strength, I'm still not nearly strong enough to confront Saitama once again. I'm asking you, from one warrior to another, can you help me to become stronger? Sonic expected Nappa to throw another vociferous and insulting comment for exposing his inner insecurity like this. But the room was filled with nothing but silence. When Sonic rolled back to face Nappa, Nappa's mouth was just a straight line. His eyes were blank, his hands were on the floor, and his face showed no sign of anger or condescension. It was almost like he felt compassion for Sonic's internal turmoil, and struggle because he had seen it somewhere in another young, ill-mannered fighter before who'd never had the guts to speak up about how he felt. Sonic felt like he could have stayed that way forever until Nappa finally spoke. You might be a speedy prick, but I have to admit, you surprised me. I figure teaching you a thing or two won't be too bad. And besides, even if you knew how to use your energy, you'd still be totally screwed against me. Sonic's eyes widened. Wait, so is that a yes? Nappa slapped his hand to the floor. Get your ass down here, you punk-ass bitch. Yes, soon, Saitama's bald head will be mine. The battle between Recoome and Puri-Puri prisoner was still going on, and the heat was only getting more intense. Puri-Puri prisoner kneed Recoome in the stomach, which sent him flying into the sky. But quickly recovering, Recoome struck a pose while mid-air and shouted, "Recoome Renegade Bomber." From Recoome fired a consecutive series of purple energy blasts. Puri-Puri Prisoner let out a slight gasp and swiftly jumped and ran across the stadium in an effort to confuse Recoome and make it more difficult to predict where he would be. Recoome laughed in delight while he watched Puri-Puri Prisoner running from his attacks like a weakling. Then, for a brief moment, Puri-Puri Prisoner disappeared from his line of sight. Nice try, Puri-Puri. Recoome grabbed Puri-Puri Prisoner, who had unsuccessfully attempted to sneak behind Recoome while he was distracted with his renegade bomber, and grabbed him by the waist. But your stealth is nowhere near Recoome's. Recoome flew down to the ground, and with all of his might, slammed Puri-Puri Prisoner to the ground. Fragments of stone and huge dust winds formed at the impact of the fall, spreading all across the stadium and into the eyes of the spectators. "That was a doozy, mate," said Jace. "That's gonna leave a mark in the morning," added Burter. "If he even gets to see another morning," said Guldo. "Damn straight," shouted Burter in response. The smoke began to clear, and the heroes waited in nervous anticipation to see how bad Puri-Puri Prisoner was damaged. But they didn't even need to wait for the smoke, as Puri-Puri Prisoner suddenly jumped out from the point of impact and onto the hero's side of the arena. "Fury, are you alright, man?" shouted Super Alloy Darkshine. "He's got me in a pinch, Darky." All of the heroes could see from his heavy breathing and the many wounds on his body that he was telling the truth. "I'm not sure if I can win this one." "I got an idea for you," said Metal Bat. "Oh, and what might that be?" replied Puri-Puri Prisoner with an aggravated tone. "Use your ball and chain from your prison. You've still got it attached to your leg." Puri-Puri Prisoner looked down, and sure enough, his ball and chain was laying on the ground. Puri-Puri Prisoner grabbed the handle of the ball and chain and snapped it in two. "I'm not accustomed to using a weapon, but given how things are going right now, I don't think I have much of a choice." The S-Class hero began spinning the weapon in a circular motion, testing it and swinging it repeatedly to test its mobility. "It's worth a shot." Meanwhile, Recoome was searching for Puri-Puri Prisoner through the wall of dust. "Where did you go, Puri-Puri? You can't run from Recoome." "Who said I was running?" "Huh?" Before Recoome had the chance to look up, he was quickly nailed across the face by an iron ball. Recoome staggered back. He quickly ran his tongue through his mouth to see if his teeth were still there, and thankfully they were. "That's cheating. You can't use weapons. Oh, and it's fair that you can fly and use energy attacks that could wipe a hero more powerful with a single blast. You can't do that. No, only a Spurs and some monsters can perform such feats." You know, he makes a valid point. The dust finally cleared, and the spectators were able to view what just happened, with Frieza chiming in when he heard this argument. "And I especially love how this is coming from the one who snuck onto the arena while his teammates were trying to decide who would go next. Yeah, ya bloke. I think that just levels the playing field, so suck it up, Recoome," shouted Ginyu. "Alright, FIINNNE." Recoome bounded towards Puri-Puri Prisoner, but the hero had expected this. Just as his fist was about to connect with his opponent's face, Puri-Puri Prisoner bent downward, and his body was right above him. Puri-Puri Prisoner swung his iron ball into Recoome's danger zone. www.hhhwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwhhhwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwwhThe picture, they all gasped and squinted their eyes, letting gasps and ohs of pity and disgust. "That was overboard," shouted Jace. "Not cool," yelled Burter, followed by several more insults by the Ginyus. "It wasn't intentional. I meant to hit his stomach." Either way, he had it coming. Recoome was on the ground, writhing and squealing and holding his cojones like his life depended on it. Puri-Puri Prisoner stood above Recoome, watching this display of pain. Then, in an uncharacteristic move, he kicked Recoome in the stomach, which sent him a couple of feet up into the air. "Sorry, but I'm here to win. And while the loss of your boyhood is tragic, it's not like there was much to lose anyway." Puri-Puri Prisoner continued his assault. To torment him even more, the S-Class hero pummeled him with his iron ball, swinging away at his arms, his legs, his back. Basically every part of his body that could be hit was being hit by this iron ball of death. Puri-Puri Prisoner was beaming. He had to admit, Metal Bat's idea wasn't all that bad. He might actually use this as a permanent weapon. Recoome's body then plopped down back onto the arena. Puri-Puri Prisoner landed on the opposite side of the small crater with a thud, just about 20 feet away from Recoome. Puri-Puri Prisoner's Dark Iron Angel style is my best style yet. Recoome's fingers began to twitch, and he slowly began to push himself off of the ground. He can still stand. With such large muscles as those, I can see why, said Darkshine to nobody in particular. How dare you? Recoome was looking at the ground, but Puri-Puri prisoner could hear from his voice the pure anger coursing through him. Recoome shows you respect, and you go so low as to take Recoome's crown jewels and smash them up into little pieces. You bastard. On cue, Recoome began to scream, a purple aura enveloping him as he powered up to his maximum state. That's it. Recoome has had enough. Recoome bent his knees and balled his hands into fists. Puri-Puri prisoner didn't like what was going on. Puri-Puri prisoner, feel the strength of the Recoome Ultra Fighting Miracle. But before he finished, Recoome used his instantaneous movement, and Puri-Puri prisoner gasped when Recoome appeared right in front of him. Punch! With his entire body illuminating with a bright purple glow, Recoome landed his ultimate attack with a right uppercut, driving into Puri-Puri prisoner's stomach. The S-class hero was sent several hundred feet into the air, flipped in the air about 300 times, and when he finally came back on the ground, Puri-Puri prisoner landed on his face, cracking the tiles. Oh, Recoome forgot one more thing. Recoome craned his leg back and drove his foot straight into Puri-Puri prisoner's nutsack, eliciting another round of shock gasps and hums of pity. It doesn't feel too good, does it? Puri-Puri prisoner gave no response. Recoome is done with you, Puri-Puri prisoner. He turned his back to the prisoner, but he gave one final look at his opponent and spit on his naked body. His teammates once again began whooping, cheering, and applauding Recoome as he stood on the edge of the stage, taking in the glory of his victory. Good job, buddy, shouted Guldo. Recoome told you he would win it for you, Guldo. Recoome then began doing poses on the edge of the stage in a gloating fashion. Recoome is number one. Recoome is the ultimate king of the Frieza mania. No, you aren't. Recoome's eyes widened. No, it couldn't be. Sadly, before he had the chance to turn around, he felt 2 feet pushing his back. You let your guard down. Double angel kick. If Recoome had been closer into the arena, he could have been able to plant his feet into the ground or stop the momentum of the kick, but he was standing right at the edge of the arena, so sadly, Recoome could do nothing as his whole world came falling down off of his victory stand. Recoome then landed onto the stone ground just outside of the arena, with Puri-Puri prisoner standing on top of his fallen body. Now, if I recall, I believe if you are knocked out of the arena, you lose. And since my feet haven't touched the ground, that means I haven't landed out of the arena. So in that case, I'm the winner. Recoome lifted head and quietly spoke with whatever voice he had left. How did you survive Recoome's ultra fighting miracle punch? Throughout all of my recent fights and my time in prison, if I've gained anything, it was endurance. But if it's any consolation, that hurt like hell. Not funny. Puri-Puri prisoner leapt up from Recoome's body and back onto the stage, where he slowly trudged himself back onto his side, where the heroes were all waiting for them with grins on their faces. Even Garou gave a few nods of respect. Thank you all for your support. Puri-Puri prisoner reached the edge of the stage and jumped back down to the ground where Super Alloy Darkshine, Bang, Bomb, and other heroes gave their claps of congratulations. However, their celebrations were halted when they noticed Puri-Puri prisoner suddenly started wobbling in his place. Are you alright, man? Asked Super Alloy Darkshine. Darky, you might not realize it, but look. Puri-Puri prisoner pointed at his stomach, and everyone gasped when they noticed a huge blood splotch all over his abs. It's a miracle that I survived that. I've been toughing out the pain, but now, I need rest. Everyone gasped as Puri-Puri prisoner collapsed onto the ground. Super Alloy Darkshine brought his fingers to Puri-Puri prisoner's throat, and let out a breath of relief when he felt a pulse. He's fine, just unconscious. He went through a hell of a beating, commented Garou. Even though he has a perverted sense of justice, he still fought a decent battle. On the other side, Recoome grudgingly pushed himself off of the ground and flew up to the Ginyus, who all had disappointed looks on their faces. Recoome, mate, that was a pretty big letdown there. I really thought you had it in the bag, said Jace. You ruined our winning streak, man, added Burter. Don't add any more pain than there already is, said Recoome in a weak, almost whispering voice that was devoid of passion. Just stand here on the sidelines, Recoome ordered Captain Ginyu. Not even bothering to look up, Recoome did as he was told, and kept his head and shoulders slouched in humiliating defeat. So, Burter, Jace, I've already decided I'm going last, so why don't you two decide amongst yourselves who's going to be the next contestant? With Pleasa, Captain. Rock, paper, scissors, said Burter. Obviously, replied Jace. The two Ginyus extended their hands, chanted the 3 words, and yelled, shoot. Alas, the winner of this mini-game wasn't the Space Australian, but the speedy quick blue snake guy. Aw piss, Burter shouted in triumph. The fastest guy in the universe is the contestant for round 4. But what are we gonna do about the arena? Burter motioned to the arena, and the other genius saw his point. The arena was filled with several craters, both large and small, and dozens of white stone tiles were either shattered or missing. Oh, don't worry. Lord Frieza stood up from his hover chair and raised his hands. I dabble a little in telekinesis too, you know. Frieza lifted his index finger up, and from the ground, he lifted 2 more boulders. In a mirror method of tornado, he slammed the rock into the ground, cut the other boulder into several more white tiles, and smoothly placed all of the white tiles on the areas with the missing or broken tiles. There, done and done. Superb job, my lord, remarked Captain Ginyu. Thank you, Captain Ginyu. Burter, go enjoy yourself. Will do, Lord Frieza. In less than 0.5 seconds, Burter appeared on the newly refurbished arena. Since Recoome gave his nifty little intro, I figure one of my own isn't out of line. My name is Burter, and I'm the fastest guy in the universe. Any of you want to challenge that title? Okay, so we've got one of these guys. All of the heroes looked at each other and noticed the one who said it was, of course, Flashy Flash. Wow, it seems kinda redundant, don't you think? Said Metal Bat. The fastest guy in the universe versus the fastest guy in the Hero Association. You're not funny, Metal Bat. Flashy Flash vanished in an instant. The S-Class hero then reappeared, standing superbly confident against Burter. Oh, and what's your name? You can call me Flashy Flash, replied the hero. Seems kinda braggish, don't you think? Coming from the guy who calls himself the fastest in the universe. Whatever. Okay, now that the formalities are out of the way, let the 4th round of the Frieza Mania begin. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then goodbye.